Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day 3 of Sales Mastery Unfiltered. It is awesome to have you back. We're so excited about what's happened in the first 2 days, and I can tell you right now, today is going to be a blockbuster. We've got some serious talent lined up for some serious conversations about some serious things that can impact performance, both for you and your teams. I want to remind you that on day 1, we talked in the morning about Einstein, and we talked about those quotes that were really the empowering quotes, the centering thought quotes for our 3 days together. And one of those was, he mentioned that he had no special talents, but he was passionately committed to being curious. And I told you throughout Sales Mastery to be curious, really to look as we hear the speakers and have the dialogues, just look and be curious, like, how would this work for me? And what would my life look like if we can make this kind of thing start to happen? And so be curious. And the other thing I told you is that one of his most famous quotes that I really love is that you cannot solve the problems you're experiencing at the same level of thinking you were at when you created those problems. And so I encouraged you 2 days ago, and I remind you this morning, let's think at a new level. Let's think bigger. Let's think differently. Thomas Dreyer said the life that we live is the life within the limits of our own thinking, okay? Let's think about possibility. Let's think about growth. Let's think about defying the odds, right? And doing something real special. So this morning and today is about leadership. We call today the leadership trifecta. We're going to spend the whole day talking about operational excellence. We're going to talk about value-based recruiting, and we're going to talk about high trust retention. And whether you're a loan officer with one person on your team or a senior leader with a whole company, this day is going to change your life. I've got 2 great friends to hang out with me. They're both part of our elite coaching program. We've known each other for decades, and they are 2 of the best. Wally Elibieri is just, what do we say about Wally? Wally lives life big. He's smart, he's intelligent, he's fun, and he's built a super cool business with teams. Marty Preston, if you remember yesterday, Marty Preston is the guy that Wally gave all the credit to. He actually said I kicked him to the curb, and Wally and Marty took over. That's not exactly how it happened. But in any event, Marty runs a substantially powerful and profitable branch system as well. And so we're going to have 35 minutes with these 2 guys today. We're just going to talk about the stuff that matters most to you regarding teams and the things that you're most proud of, some of maybe the hurdles you've run into and how you've gotten around them. And we're just going to lay down as much as we can in our time together. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right. So my first question is, what's the biggest lessons that you have each learned in building teams? And let's, Marty, start with you.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I would tell you, and this is going to sound a little bit cliche, I guess, but the truth is if you hire the right person with the right attitude, with the right character, with the right work ethic, everything else will go really well, even if you don't have perfect systems in place.
Yeah.
However, if you hire someone without the right character, without the right work ethic, without the right attitude, you could have the most perfect system, the most perfect scripting and processes and everything dialed out, and it won't work well. And the reason I tried not to make this my answer to that, because I was like, yeah, everybody's going to hear that and go, okay, back to typing or whatever. But it's huge because as I've been coaching people, one of the things that you really start to understand is I've had people that tell me they're having major problems within their process who had great processes. In fact, I've probably stolen some of the stuff that they were telling me, like, well, maybe this is what's wrong or this is what's wrong and all that. And I started analyzing and kind of evaluating the differences. And the difference is I have a phenomenal team of people who have been together for a long time. And it changes everything when people have the right attitude, because it changes how you talk to people, what you have to say. It changes everything. And the bottom line is the right person will figure out how to get something done. I've hired someone to evaluate our systems because I have people who are just willing to make things work. Yeah. And then you realize they're not doing things very efficiently, really. they're just willing to work hard because they have a great attitude and everything else, and they want to get the job done. Then someone comes in and is like, well, you could do this and make it much easier, faster. And they're like, oh, great. But, they were never complaining before. So it ends up being huge. And we can go into that as much as you want. But, I've learned a lot from a lot of different people, you and Wally and Brian Bomar, a lot of different people about, well, how do you make sure you're hiring the right person? And that ends up being a really, really big deal because I like people.
Yeah.
So my natural tendency is to be like, I like you. Let's do this. And then, a month or two later, I'm like, you weren't like that, a month ago. So
which I think brings up a really important point. It's a hiring kind of dilemma because likability is important, right? You do want to hire people that you like, but you don't want to hire people that maybe you are like because you need diversity. You need people that have different angles and different ways to contribute to the team. But I think the one thing that we can all count on, you could have 10 great players on your team. You could have one person on your team with a bad attitude, and that one person with a bad attitude can actually crack, crush, and destroy the culture of the other 9 they're trying to create. And what's more important, attitude or talent? They're both important, but
without question, attitude.
Yeah, right?
Without question.
Yeah,
not even
you
close.
can learn the talent, you have the skill, but if you have bad attitude, it's trouble.
Yeah, and I mean, I had this conversation with my son, who's a golfer, and the more you know about something, the more you tend to make it more than it is. And, he's an expert golfer, so he analyzes golf at a whole different level. Well, I've been doing this business for 20 plus years, so I look at it at a whole different level. We tend to make it more complicated than it is.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to calculate re-entry temperatures or anything like that where, this is not rocket science, literally. Like this, we just do loans. And I think sometimes we make it overcomplicated and we look for things that aren't necessary and talent and all that. In our business, if you have somebody with a great work ethic, a great attitude, and great character, you can absolutely dominate.
That's huge.
Regardless of the talent.
Yeah. Good place to start. How about you, man?
So here's the problem being on stage with these 2 fine gentlemen. You get so drawn in their stories, you forget the question.
So the question is, what are the biggest lessons that you have learned in building teams? And obviously, what's the biggest one?
Golly, I would say definitely it's not a what, it's a who. There's so many times that it's worked 15, 20-hour days, Monday through Sunday, like everything was work harder, work harder, work harder. And when someone asks me, why don't you just work smarter? I'm like, dude, if I knew how to work smarter, I would. What you realize, it's partly the model that you have or the standards or the systems or technologies, but the biggest thing that's helped me a ton is the who. When I try to hire assistants, and I failed with 6 assistants before I was successful with 1.
Wow.
And all those 6 unfriended me on MySpace, if you guys remember what that
MySpace.
But the gentleman named Shane Sharp, he's 1,000% different than me. What's amazing about Shane is he's the engineer Excel spreadsheet guy. What I learned at my mistake on building a team was I was hiring people like me.
Yeah.
And you get 2 of me-ish in a room, we're going to have the same wins, but we're going to have the same losses. What Shane did a phenomenal job is help segment me, help organize and structure my daily base, put together from scripts to models to systems. And what's great about it is now our team, Shane was like the pinnacle of our loan officer assistant. Now he's a leader on the team, and CJ came after him, and CJ's doing so much better and faster than what Shane does because Shane laid down that groundwork. So when you're hiring an assistant and you're trying to grow your business, it's about the who that you hire. And please don't make the same mistake that I did of trying to replace you in that role. Hire to your weaknesses, and what you'll realize is they have strengths that you don't have, and your strengths will just get 10x'd.
I think it's interesting to just think about that for a second because there's so much encouragement out there to get better, get better, get better, right? And there's very little of the deciphering of what should I get better at. And so it's impossible to get better at everything, right? And so when you work on your weaknesses, you actually are robbing your team, your company, even your family from your best version of you. And I think it's interesting too that what we are weak at, we're weak at because we're weak at it. And there's a difference between learning how to do something well, but having the gift to do it, and trying to learn how to do something well and not having the gift. I don't have the gift of detail, data, that kind of stuff. No matter how hard I work on that weakness, I will never be able to exploit my other strengths. And so it's important for everybody to know that the greatest gift that you have when you listen to a couple guys like this and you're thinking about everything you do and the stuff that really isn't your favorite thing to do, that's probably a good sign that maybe somebody else should be doing it for you. And just remember that what your weaknesses are can be a job description for somebody else's strengths. And that's the beauty of bringing a team together, right?
Well, I think also when you realize, so what Shane and CJ and other gentlemen on my team and other partners on my team, what they realize is there's things that when they broke down what made me successful, there's things I was really good at.
Yeah.
As we learn to segment our business to go from 40 million to 100 million to 200 to 300 million, as we learn to segment what we did well, we found people that were phenomenal at that space, in that lane. So when you find people that are phenomenal, like world class in that space, in that lane, and you all gel together because you're hiring the right person with the right attitude, you're on a rocket ship and then some.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So when you guys think about the attitude piece, the who piece, the right people, there's a lot of mistakes that are made in hiring, and there's a lot of, I think, misguided hope or thought that I can change this person or I can groom this person. And oftentimes the best we see when we're hiring is at the very start. The best we see is at the interview, and all this other stuff kind of starts to unveil itself. What are both of your pieces or philosophies around hiring right? I mean, just like the idea of the who's important, the attitude is important, but hiring right so that you minimize the risk of having to go through all of those costs of having somebody that we shouldn't have hired in the first place. What's your take on that?
Yeah, so I got two pieces of great advice. One was younger in my career. One was there's two types of talent out there: proven talent and emerging talent. Proven talent is someone in that space that is already world class in that space. Well, they're super duper expensive and they require a lot. I couldn't afford that when we were younger in the business. So I started looking for emerging talent. How do you identify emerging talent? Emerging talent is super duper simple. Who do you know that you want to hire that's going to have a world class year next year that you need to get on their rocket ship? And when I started finding emerging talent that truly was going to be successful in that space, regardless with or without me, and I was able to latch on to their rocket ship, we all grew together. And as you think of as you think about that and you realize there is people that are going to be successful, and either you want to train your team to grow or you're going to learn that you're training your competition. And as we've grown, our team has gotten stronger because we've all grown together and we all add value to each other.
Yeah.
I think there's a song my kids listen to, I got to make it or make it. I got to make it or make it. And I remember when I was younger, and I've talked to him a lot, I think both of us really had that. Like, I think there was a time in my life where it was like, I got to make it or make it. Like, I don't know necessarily exactly how, but I'm going to make it or I'm going to make it. And in 2004, I heard you do an interview with Jim McMahon on a CD, and I immediately went online and saw that you all were speaking at a conference in Salt Lake City. I immediately booked tickets. I immediately flew out there. I took one of my loan officers. We sat on the front row, and every time you paused, I would come up and ask a question to you or Jim. I bought that suitcase, Life Mastery, Sales Mastery, Time Mastery, the Assistant System,
Power partnerships, building clients for life.
All of it. And I've listened to them all multiple times, okay? You can lift someone up, and I can. So like when I'm interviewing someone and I'm talking to them, I very much believe, okay, I can change you. I can't change who you are, but I can change where you are. And there's a huge difference between the two. So what I've learned through a lot of mistakes is in the interview, I'm more trying to learn who you are than what you are and all that. Like, I don't care necessarily about your talent level, because I think if I really broke down, I have 6 loan officers in my office, and I think if I gave you a description without telling them who you are or who they are, most people, because I've done this before, pick the top producers as the bottom producers and vice versa. And it just happens, but it just comes down to the attitude of I'm going to make it or make it. And you're going to alter that a little bit based on the position that you're hiring for. Certainly, if you're looking for a mortgage planner or producing anybody in production, you're looking for somebody with that attitude of I'm going to make it or make it. And if you find it, they're going to make it. And then I think with a support staff or whatever we want to call that, whether it's processing, which means different things to different people and all that, I think that ends up being someone who takes a great sense of pride in helping. And what I've learned is, and this has really helped me through coaching some other people, one of the questions I get asked every now and then is, when someone on your team makes a mistake, how do you correct them or discipline them? So what I realized is I don't have to really correct them as much as I have to almost console them. And what I mean by that is when someone on my team makes a mistake, and I can think of several different examples, but they're already so upset that they made a mistake.
Right.
There's no reason for me to go in there and be like, you just cost me $3,000. There's just no point in it, because they're already way more upset than I think they should be about it. So most of the time, it's more a conversation of, hey, look, like, this is literally the first mistake I can remember you making in like years. So like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's fine. Just, move on. It's no big deal. You're huge value. I appreciate you so much. It's almost like, it's okay. Come back. Like, I don't need you to be upset right now. I just need you to, be you.
Well, and this is a very important point to make, because I think that people miss, and emerging leaders, because most of us that became branch managers were not like given a master class in being a branch manager, right? And we did loans really well, but we didn't necessarily know how to hire and lead people, right? And I think the interesting thing about what you just brought up is human performance, high performances, which is what we're talking about, can only exist if the leader makes the culture okay to fail. And what we know about the success equation, at least at this level, is there is no such thing as succeeding without failing.
No,
there's always going to be lessons that are learned. And one of the things I learned as a manager, it was a painful lesson, and somebody came up to me and said, you should praise in public, you should coach in private. Because I took somebody to the woodshed in front of like 4 processors, and I learned a really bad lesson. I made that person feel worse than actually what they did wrong. And I embarrassed them in front of all of their colleagues. So I think that when people make mistakes, we have to celebrate that is a successful way to have figured out how not to do it that way. And that's what you're saying.
Sometimes
it's got to be okay.
Sometimes you might want to celebrate the mistake in front of people, not because you want to upset that person. It's not correcting. It's almost like, yeah, I'm glad you made the mistake because at least you were trying. Go try. That's a great point.
And that's another quote from Einstein. If you're not making mistakes, you're not trying anything new.
I had a teammate that made a $28,000 mistake about 3 weeks ago. So I'll leave the details out. And
who was the team now?
$28,000 mistake. It's super cool how they approached me. Okay, I won't say it's a he or she. They walked in my office and said, "I screwed up. This is what happened. This is what's going to cost to fix it. This is what I've learned from it.
Wow.
And here's where I'm going to tweak something in our model to prevent it from next time." I have never been so super okay with losing $28,000 on a deal to get it closed. But that taught me. I'm like, do me a favor. Can you email that structure out to the whole entire branch? And it's just how you share that data, how you share those mistakes really matters.
Yeah.
So here's a great point, because one of the things is how do you identify people like that? So the way you identify people like that is you ask them the right questions. And the questions we sometimes ask, or at least the questions I used to ask when I was interviewing people, was, how badly do you want to be successful? Because I was thinking, I want to find somebody that wants to make it or make it. Well, is anyone not going to say, I want it?
Not really.
No. Here's a great question. If you make a mistake that cost me $28,000, and at this point you're the only one that knows about it, what would you do? Would you inform me? How would you inform me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you ever had someone make a mistake and offer to pay for it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, me too, all the time. Yeah. When you have someone on your team that makes a mistake that costs you money and they suggest you take it out of their paycheck, first, never do that.
Yeah. But that speaks
ironically,
volumes.
If they don't suggest it, you might want to do it. But if they suggest you take it out of their paycheck, never do it.
Speaks volumes.
And absolutely put 3 extra stars next to their name because, I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
And those are great questions to ask people in the interview process is, you know, one of the things we did when we were in Hawaii, what year was that?
15 and 18.
So I was the worst person on the planet hiring people, and I was very aware of it. And part of that leadership conference was on that. And I sat down with a couple of people in the group, and literally it was kind of like, well, you know, just like if you're looking for a spouse or anything else, you want to look for what characteristics work? Like, what are you looking for? And people that you've worked with before that are great, what are those characteristics? Because obviously that's what you want to duplicate. So we came up with like 25 to 30 things. And now what we do is before I ever meet with the person, we'll send them a questionnaire that says, please grade yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like one of the best in the world, 1 being one of the worst in the world at each of these things. So it's like basic things, loyalty, honesty. Honesty's the first one on the list. And the reason we did that is because guess what everyone puts on honesty? 10. So then the first interview question, when I actually meet with them, is I noticed you gave yourself a 10 on honesty. They're like, yep, I'm a 10. I'm like, okay, so just so we're clear, that means if your child asks you a week before Christmas, if you got them this for Christmas, and you did, you would go, yep, that's what I got you. Or if your wife says, do these look a little tight on me? And you're like, they do. You're going to go, yeah, they do. You're not going to go, no, I think they look great. You know, I like those other ones, you know, and then they're like, well, I might not be a 10, but it's a great way to kind of start it off because then you can kind of go through some of the other ones and they're a lot more open. So that was a really good thing I learned from that conference was, you know, just learning to ask people the right questions. Like, you know, when they say loyal, I'll go, okay, well, when was an example in your previous work life or anything else when you were loyal at a point where no one else was?
I think it's also the way you ask the question. Earlier interviewing, I'd ask, so 1 to 10, what would you rate your drive? Well, who's going to say it's a 4? Yeah, right? But I learned to ask questions. So think of like reverse engineering the questions. Yeah. And the question that I learned to ask is, hey, you know, if we part ways today and I don't hire you, what do you plan on going and doing? And there's a gentleman that I interviewed goes, well, on my way up the elevator, I saw there's another mortgage company downstairs. I'm going to go there, and I'm going to interview there, and I'm going to get in the mortgage industry. I'm like, bro, you're hired. Like, that was it. Like,
I'm going to make you regret it. Everything,
you want to hire the people that are going to make it or make it.
Well, and I think the other thing, too, on just questions is like that whole drive question. You know, you can ask the question, how driven are you? And people are going to probably say, I'm driven. And then what you have to do then is you have to go, give me 1 or 2 examples over the last 3 weeks where you encountered something, and because you have drive, you won. And then that way you're able to kind of go deep on it. And before I forget, though, I want to put an exclamation point on be okay as a leader to create a culture of failure, being okay. I want to just echo that because if you don't do that, your team will not look for the edge. They will not look for the creative tweaks. They will not look for the curiosity that could actually fix the systems if they fear that we might fail and you don't have a culture that makes that okay. So make failure okay, but also simultaneously do your very best to not let anybody make the same mistake twice. And that's a big deal. All right, you guys have both done an amazing job hiring unique titles. You have people that are not in the normalcy of just an LOA or a production partner. And I think I'd like to talk about like just one example from each of you of something you've done really uniquely and creatively that just isn't on most people's radar as this, I hired this person to do only this. Who wants to start?
I just hired an efficiency expert, which is a software engineer with leadership background and experience that most importantly has great character, great attitude, great work ethic, okay? And I've known her forever. I just didn't know that she was in software. And the reason I didn't know that is because she just didn't seem like that. You know, like the stereotype that I had in my mind, she didn't have it. And then she ended up sending me a resume. And a month before, I had put together a job description. And it's almost eerie how much her resume matched the job description. And it's somebody who, her son played baseball with my son, and they have for 10 years. So it worked out great. And with the biggest thing I can say is within a month. Now, her job is to go around and basically help people do things better, which can be taken very easily as you're doing this wrong. Let me, who has no experience in this business, show you how to do it better. So that could be very bad. And the most exciting thing about this is within a month, I had 10 different emails from 10 different employees telling me how awesome she is. Because again, it's the work ethic, it's the attitude, it's the way she went about it. She's not here trying to say you did this wrong. She's saying, help me, help you. If there's anything from my experience that I can match with your experience to make this better, that's what I want to do, and it's been awesome. So that's probably from a unique position standpoint, that's pretty unique, I would think.
Well, it's huge because if we're working on efficiency and everybody on the team is getting 1% or 2% better a day or a week or whatever, that's a unique position. It's unique, and it's not a talent probably that you have. It's not a talent that I have.
Not at all.
And so that's a good example. How about you?
So I've got a few, but I'd say the number one is culture queen. So
Whoa. Culture
queen. Yeah. So culture queen
is a literal position that you.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
She's on her team. She'll grow it also helping with the branch. But what's been great for one of our biggest challenges is also one of our biggest strengths. A lot, if not all, the loan officers on my team or in our branch are ridiculously laser focused. We're efficiency junkies, and we're so well organized and driven. Makes us very successful. The challenge is we don't really celebrate very well. We don't really, we can improve a ton on celebrating birthdays or anniversaries or things that are culture-driven type of activities in our team or in our branch. So if we do a poor job for us, we probably do a pretty darn poor job for our clients, for our referral partners. And that's where I identified last year, that's where our biggest gap was. We're so well driven and so focused on the next deal, the next referral partner, the next model, system, technologies, and everything grows and scales, which is great. Where a culture queen, her role is to be going through one of her job roles is go through Facebook of our clients and find out who had a baby, who just got out of hospital because they had COVID, whatever special situation was going on in their life, that then she goes and buys a gift for that, either hand delivers it, UPS delivers it, whatever it is. But it's a way that we give back and showing that we're caring, but also not only just clients and referral partners, but within our team, which I think is just super duper cool. And that's something I am not very good at. I'm not good at all at it, actually. So understand that you can hire out and you can have a teammate where she just loves to give. And that's our culture queen.
That's crazy, but it's beautiful. Yeah. One of the other things that you told us, I think we were in Canyons, Colorado, and we were at our first elite retreat this year, and you were talking about how you, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about how you allowed some of the key positions on your team to actually develop kind of the job flow, right? The job checklist. And I thought it was interesting, and I don't know if I'm setting it up the right way, but you know where I'm going with this, because I thought that was one of the most unconventional ways to scale a team that I'd ever heard. Can you?
Well, I think I feel I made so many mistakes younger, and I'm sure I still do today. But mistakes as a leader of like, hey, and if you know my story. So I graduated high school living out of my car. I was homeless from the age of 17 years old to the age of 19 years old, or 18 and a half. So it was about a year and a half that I was homeless. So living out of my car and getting the mortgage business when I was 19 years old, like the drive was there. Like I had to make it or I had to make it. There wasn't any other choices. So the drive has always been there to drive. Well, not everybody's like that. Yeah. And they don't need to be.
It's okay, yeah.
It's 100% okay. And what I learned was they have different strengths and you've got to make them have their own vision. Where a mistake I made was, hey, this is what you're going to do. This is how you're going to build it. This is how you're going to time block. This is you're going to be your business plan. This is going to how you structure it. And if you do these, then we'll do this much volume. Well, that doesn't work. I mean, it's what's that old adage? You can lead a horse to water. You can't make it drink.
Yeah.
Well, I spent so much time and effort trying to lead that horse to water and trying to force them to drink and motivate them to drink and inspire them to drink. Well, when you sit down with a teammate and you talk about their dreams, what do they want to accomplish? What do they want to be known for? What do they want their kids to remember them as? Mm-hmm. And you really emotionally connect with what's important to them. Okay, great. Well, what kind of income does that produce for you? What income do you need to have that kind of lifestyle? What income do you need to have that kind of vacation?
Right.
What income do you need to have that kind of wealth? Okay, then again, you reverse engineering. Okay, to have that kind of income, what does your production need to be? To have that kind of production, what does your day need to look like? What does your number of referral partners need to look like? What does your daily activities need to look like? What do you need to learn to say no to? And before you knew it, it was a complete roadmap, boom, boom, boom. And it was 100% their choices. It was their vision. I ended up getting what I wanted, which was a happy teammate that was super successful and super driven. But I had to be patient enough to walk them down the path that they wanted for their life, not what I wanted for their life.
Yeah. And even on the task, I wouldn't say 100% their choice, but I would say like the way people do it, I would say 80% their choice. I mean, you're probably going to have guardrails up. In other words, because you have to you set the result because you're the leader. But like with a job description, or especially with how people go about accomplishing a task, I remember when I was younger and I was playing baseball, I was being taught to catch a ground ball by rolling. In other words, as the ground ball comes, you just roll and catch it. And I remember watching Ozzie Smith, who was widely known as the best shortstop at the time, for sure, and one of the best of all time, and he would scoop it. So then my personality would be like, hey, coach, that guy does it like this, and you're coaching this team, and you're doing this, so I'm going to do it his way. But sure enough, like all the way up into college, people would be like that. And the bottom line is there are different ways to do it.
Yeah.
And based on that person's personality and that person's skill set and all that, it's okay if they do it different. If I go in and try to tell Jenny or Sharon or Julia or Amanda how to process a loan, that would be the worst possible thing, that I could do. Now, I can put results in play, like this is the result I want, and things like that. This is the report I want. But yeah, I think it's a great idea to make sure they're the ones putting the processes together.
I love it.
And what the pro tip behind that is about 9 months, almost 10 months ago. Now I said, why don't you take this home to your spouse? Mm-hmm. Take it home to your spouse, walk them through what you're going to accomplish and what the end results are. Because I had challenges. Okay, the teammate was super motivated, super excited, ready to go, but then the spouse wasn't on board. And the challenge with that was if it was going to be them choosing the spouse or me, I'm going to lose 10 out of 10 times. What I've learned is the spouse, once you get the spouse on board and understanding what some sacrifices you got to make time-wise or effort-wise, once they're on board, it gels so much faster.
Yeah, not to mention they'll point out it won't work. Like that you won't do that. You don't have to be the one doing that. Like you can't do that.
And I feel so sorry for this teammate. I've got a teammate that their spouse when they get home. All right, how many calls do you make today? You on track with your calls? How many apps do you got? I'm like,
Partner accountability at some level. Partner accountability works. All right. Well, we got to wrap up our time, but I wanted to ask one more question, and it's kind of a left field question. But if you think about profitability, and you think about running a branch profitably, running an area profitably, what is the one thing that each of you would say that you feel allows you to run a lean and profitable organization?
He's the expert at that. I'll give mine, but he's phenomenal at that. I've learned so much from Marty on that. Protect your downside and share your upside. That's what I would say.
Whoa.
Protect your downside and share your upside. Once I started learning how to run a business and multiple businesses, in every industry, it's the same thing. When you look at in someone's budgets or salaries or P&Ls, an amateur business person says, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to accomplish this, we're going to accomplish that. Well, dude, sometimes you miss. You just miss. It's just human nature. As you're structuring comp plans, you have to protect your downside. If you miss, you're not losing your shirt.
Right.
If you miss, you're not throwing away 3 months worth of profitability. If you protect your protect your downside, and when you get your upside, then you share profits. Okay, great. Well, this is what's going to take us to this break even. This is the rate of return that we want. And as you get this piece of the pie of it, as it gets to the next level, you get a bigger piece of the pie, bigger piece of the pie. And that's where the ambitious driven teammates that we have love the upside. That's what they're focused on.
Huge.
I would say two things. One is just because it's worth doing doesn't mean it's worth doing. And I think what I mean by that is there's a lot of times that we can justify doing something, buying leads or whatever it is, and I don't mean to pick on that as a specific thing, but it's like, well, if it's costing me $2,000 a month to buy leads and I'm closing one loan a month, I'm making more than enough, so it's worth doing. Well, not necessarily, because with that money and with that time and with everything else, because if those leads aren't good leads, then you also have to manage the leads that are coming in, and if they're not closing, which if only one's closing, that can actually be a very high cost decision that you're thinking is worth doing because the revenue fit the cost. So just because it's worth doing does not mean it's worth doing. So I've gotten to a point where I have questions before we do anything, and it's almost like, convince me this is the best thing. So whether it's good to great or anything else, it comes down to, good always gets in the way of great. And I heard a saying one time that says, the only thing that prevents someone from becoming great at something better than being good at it is being really good at it. Okay, so you just want to be careful about that, because a lot of times we spend money on things and it's not necessarily the greatest thing. But the other biggest thing is people. So we've talked about unique hires and things like that. And the biggest thing that I see that gets in the way of someone's growth as a branch or as a team or anything else is either, and it goes both ways, either their willingness to hire somebody they did not really need, because then that's an unnecessary expense that weighs down on their profit. And those people talk in terms of units and volume a lot and never mention the bottom line ever. In fact, they don't even know theirs in most cases, but they can tell you exactly how many units and exactly how much volume they did, but they can't tell you how much money they make. All right. And then the other one is being afraid to hire someone. So it's both sides of it. And the one thing that I think our industry does not do well, that I would at least tell you or try to encourage you to think about, is what if you only needed a third of a person? In other words, there's a position out there like an efficiency expert or a culture queen or whatever that you really like the idea of it, but based on your current operation, you don't need a full-time person for that. In most cases, there are other people that could use that same thing, and it is not as complicated as sometimes we make it to share that employee across different branches, especially within a company. Like I'm at Benchmark. So, at Benchmark, it would not be hard for me to call up a few other branch managers that I know and say, here's an idea I have. I'd really like to hire this person. I need them to do this. 9 times out of 10, they're going to go, gosh, I could really use that too.
Right.
Okay, and then it's just a matter of how would we separate that cost? And it could even work with people that are at different companies.
Right.
Wally's at Fairway, I'm at Benchmark. I could call Wally up and be like, what about this idea? And right now, as we're talking right now, it's not that big of a deal. Everybody kind of runs with enough budget excess to where it's like,
Right.
yeah, we'll just hire
Right now.
Yeah, right now. However, we can remember 2 or 3 years ago where the conversations were, how do loan officers share loan officer assistants? Now we're like, how can each loan officer have 3?
Right.
You know, so it's a whole different deal
Yeah.
that doesn't matter so much right now, but we all know it will not too long from now.
Right.
Hopefully further off, but not too long from now. So hiring the right people and when, and certainly structuring the compensation, that was very smart about making sure that you cover both sides of that is huge. But that is the biggest thing in profitability.
Yeah, good. Wonderful dialogue, guys. It's always fun to just kind of go raw and real and unfiltered. And thank you for your friendship, and thank you for your knowledge and wisdom and experience. And anybody wants to follow up with you, what's the best way to do it?
So everybody's welcome to reach out to me. Here's a favor. It's a plug for my kids. So if you go to Instagram, look at Rumblebee. If you like Rumblebee, then reach out to me through Rumblebee, and I'd happy to jump on a call and do a 30-minute call with you. But Rumblebee Instagram.
Yeah, I don't know. However you recommend. Reach it. Hopefully my online presence is pretty good, and you can find some reviews on there. But I'd be happy to help any way I can. So.
Awesome, guys. All right. Well, thanks for watching our first session today, guys. We'll be back in just a moment with our second session. Thanks for being part of Sales Mastery Unfiltered. Good to be with you. Hey, thanks so much for joining Sales Mastery. You know what we're going to do? We're going to give away a $1,000 ticket for Sales Mastery's 30th anniversary next year, October 11th through the 14th. And we're going to take the event back to where it all began, the Marriott Desert Springs Resort in Palm Desert, California. And we're going to celebrate the 30-year anniversary. It's going to be live. It's going to be beautiful. We're going to pack the hotel. Super excited. So all I need you to do right now is pay attention and engage in the chat. Stay very focused on the chat. We're going to shoot out the contest details, so make sure you're aware of them. And then we're going to be drawing a winner very shortly for Sales Mastery number 30, 2022. Welcome back to our second session for today. Today's focus is on the leadership trifecta, everybody that we're going to be having conversation with. It's about operational excellence. It's about value-based recruiting. It's about high trust retention, and wrapped up in all of that is some ideas on how to become a better version of you in the area of leadership. I've got a good friend of mine that's joining us today. He is probably one of the smartest guys I know in the mortgage business. He's got such a capacity to think about how to structure businesses and grow businesses. It's going to be really exciting to have a conversation with my friend Jonathan Halstead. Good to have you here, buddy.
Thanks for having me, Todd. I appreciate it.
It's been great. Jonathan has been not only a graduate of the High Trust Sales Academy, but the last 4 years he's been an elite and really expanded his roles. I mean, going from a producing manager
just
to
producing branch manager
regional
to regional to divisional vice president.
Now you're divisional vice president.
Yeah.
So what we wanted to kind of talk about, I think, and we can go in a lot of different directions, but it seemed like that the things that were on your mind were like vision. Vision is a big part of leadership, and then you can't really have a vision if you're not also aligned with execution.
Sure.
And you can't really execute without at scale without measuring.
Yep.
And so I'd just be interested to hear a little bit about your leadership experience over the last couple of years as you've grown, and what are some things you've learned around vision and execution and measurement, and maybe start with vision because you're a big thinker.
Yeah. So having been in a position where I've owned a company, then subsequently went through a downturn, lost my company, then had to go work for someone, and then inevitably came to a point of developing out a business plan, relaunching a business inside of a business, and then essentially kind of reinventing myself a multitude of different times throughout my career in mortgage, is starting to get granular with where you want to be and being able to dream big and what that means for you and for your brand and for your company and where you want to be. And I think we all call to that somewhat differently. For some people, it's okay, as a loan officer, I want to go from doing 3 loans a month to 7, from 7 to 15, 15 to 20. And some of the peers that I've had the pleasure of getting to meet throughout my time in my career, and then obviously being in Elite, have really allowed me to kind of push the bounds on what my minimum standards are as an individual and what I feel that I could be capable of or wanting to potentially achieve. And I think when you sit in a room of people that are substantially more successful than you, you're going to learn a piece about what they're doing and take that and make it some of your own. And so for me, as I've gotten to learn from my peers and having phenomenal mentors, is just trying to kind of sit back and go, okay, looking at the business, looking at my brand, looking at what we believe in, where do we want to go? Right?
Yeah.
Do we want to build something bigger than ourselves? And what does that mean? And I think that's fundamentally the question that you have to ask is what are you trying to build, right? How are you going to differentiate yourself in the marketplace from everyone else,
Yeah.
right? I think as a core business is one that's sold on particularly price and cost, is people forget that people want a relationship and they want connectivity and people are willing to pay for service. So how are you going to differentiate yourself through all the noise, right?
Yeah.
And then how do you use technology and everything else that kind of goes into it to position yourself differently in the marketplace and then create more value than you take?
Yeah.
And so, for me, it's been a reinvention of myself as a loan originator, as a branch manager, and then trying to push the bounds with where I could take my business.
I love it. What a great, great, great start to an inevitably great conversation. Let's go back to vision for a sec. And you now are a divisional president,
Yep.
or vice president, and you're running a region. And you're talking about vision. And you mentioned 3 to 7 loans, 7 to 14. What's the concept or the thought or the experience you have when you look at being an executive leader now and really having to create vision for a much larger loan origination force than you ever had as a branch manager? What do you see happening? What's the good and the bad and the ugly? Because you're a big thinker, you're a big dreamer. What do you do to get that into the culture?
So I think it's first thinking at a 30,000 foot level. Where do you want to be? I'm fortunate enough to be surrounded by some really bright and successful people. And my counterpart, John, he's ran heads of retail for Stearns Lending, for Mountain West Mortgage, and for a variety of different mortgage companies. And for him, it's never enough. So when I came to Cardinal, I knew that for him, it was never going to settle at a certain number. It was being a relentless pursuit about trying to go out and build a solid, stable business and continually grow it. To be honest, I didn't really know what I was signing myself up for when I did it, because at my prior firm, I was literally just a branch. And
Yeah.
so when you get into a position, I think so much about our business is actually being given a platform to actually be able to grow and having the appropriate tools where you can take the ball and run with it and be able to do what you want to do. And I'm fortunate enough that I'm at a company that says, no matter the cost, as long as it's solid, good, profitable growth, right? We're going to support you in what you're doing. And so then at that point, it's as much about selection as it is deselection and finding the right people and that you want to attract to then be able to go do that, to go on your quest, so to speak. So for us, when we kind of sat down at the table, it's like, okay, what do you want to do? Well, at that point, I was a $20 million branch, and he had $30 million of production. He's like, well, I want to get to $2 billion within the next 2 years. And
This
I'm
is
like,
John.
John, yeah. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk. How are we going to do that? Well, we're going to do it internally, and we're going to do it externally. And so, you start working the numbers backwards, in terms of where you're at, no different than the diagnostic in your book. How many loans does it take to get to the dollarization per hour that you want to make, or the volume that you want to make? And then once you start framing that out, okay, well, what resources and infrastructure do you need to be able to achieve that goal? And I think, there's a saying that capacity precedes production, right? So it's one thing to dream big and to think about where you want to be. Now it's like, okay, what resources, what roles do we need to put in place to then be able to make that a reality? And so
I want you to go off on two things. I want you to explain selection and deselection, because it sounds obvious, but I think a lot of managers learn that lesson the hard way. And then I want to come back to the last point that you made on this idea of really, it's just so foreign to so many people that capacity precedes demand, production.
Yeah, you have to build the infrastructure.
Yeah.
To be able to support where you want to go. And to me, I look at operations, and it's no different than, to me, like football, right? You could have the best offense in the world, but if you don't have a good defense, you're still going to lose football games, right?
Right.
And what allows you to retain talent and recruit talent is operational excellence. And that's really what the name of the game is. Can you manufacture a file? Can you do it more efficiently? Can you go meet the client wherever they want to be met and make it seamless and make that client a raging fan? And that, more than anything else, is more important than the originator. Because if you think about it, the originator is selling a picture, right? So your job is to meet and exceed expectations. And I think in today's world, it's about getting to real time in terms of decisioning a mortgage, with automation or otherwise. And so to me, I had to become a perfectionist, and militant would be the appropriate word, about wanting to make sure that we had the appropriate operational capacity and the right people in the right jobs to then be able to scale and grow. And so, looking at where we're at today, we did 310 units last month for $145 million. So coming from where we were at, $50 million in production in December of 2019, to look where we're at today, that's a huge amount of production in a short period of time. So, looking internally from within, seeing the people that you have, empowering your people, giving them the autonomy to be able to grow, like John gave me the opportunity to be able to grow into that. And the one thing that's in our business that I think is so unfortunate is that we as a group, and I should say mortgage companies as a whole, don't really look at minimum standards. They want to just grow for the sake of growth.
Right.
And because they've hit a certain production capability curve, they're like, okay, well, if I have this loan officer and he does 2 loans a month, which, mind you, in 2020, the average loan officer did 3.8 units, as I think where they were at. But how much does that person sap your operational capacity because of them being mediocre? And so you are what you allow and you tolerate.
Okay, so we gotta go off on this, because I think this is the biggest transition that leaders really actually need to make. And to the point of standards, it's very surprising to me when you look at a company and you have a private conversation with a manager or a leader, and you go, so what are the minimum standards that you have for your sales team?
Yep.
And it's usually very gray if they're at all, not black and white. And the other thing that is kind of crazy is that in markets of a little bit different normalcy than we had last year, maybe even a little bit this year, it's like you have standards and people don't hit them, and there is no consequence for hitting the standard.
Yep.
So what we begin to look at is what are the costs of people on the team that are either not being managed to standards or who don't have standards compared to those that do, and the drag that it creates on the operation. And you're so smart about this. The costs of having people that don't meet expectation, or that clog the pipeline, or that whatever the standards are, it is enormous
But,
in terms of the cost.
100%. But, I remember in 2016 having just, at that particular point in my career, it was just throwing bodies at it. And that's such a poor way to be, because really that's not having any vision for where you want to be or any expectation. It's like I'm trying to create capacity operationally speaking. So sure, we're going to hire one more operations person, or we're going to add more loan officers to get to the results that we want. And people fail to take into account how much does it cost you to produce the file? How much is your cost per close? How many touches are in that? And I wasn't really monitoring those KPIs diligently enough. And so come 2017, all of a sudden production shifted. Our production declined by 30%. And all of a sudden we're running massive losses. And we get ourselves in the hole that's a couple $100,000. And I remember sitting down then having conversations with you, and we're looking at our office, and he's like, you said to me, you're like 80-20 it, right? Yep. Like, let's look at the production in your office. And my partner and I were 80% of the production, but yet, we were taking up 20% of the resources, and yet these other people were creating drag. And I remember my inaction or inability to then terminate people and or hold this minimum standard cost me $500,000. I literally, at the end of the year, if I hadn't funded a $12 million hard money loan, I would have been at a loss for the end of the year. And so then it wasn't until it burned my pocketbook that I then learned, right?
Wow.
And so for me, I just realized, look, the one thing that I've learned from you more than anything else is to value your time, right? And really focus on the execution piece of it, and really focus on where you want to give your time and who you want to be a part of your group and what your vision and what your expectation is. And so I think whether you're doing it at a branch level or you're doing it at a global level, it's to me, it's one and the same. And either people are receptive to where you're wanting to go with it or they're not. And if they're not, that's okay. Then deselect and opt out. And this year we had attrition. We had some branches that unfortunately, whether it be loan officer branches, aren't a good fit. And we had to make the disposition to let it go. And a lot of people would say, okay, well, why are you letting go of $16 million in production? Or why are you not doing this? Why are you doing this or that? For the sake of volume. And to me, if they're not culturally aligned with where you want to be and what your expectation is, then that to me is a cancer. So we all have to be on the same page. We all have to bleed the same color. We all have to say, hey, look, for us, it's you have to have integrity. Be entrepreneurial, own your market. You have to be fanatical about wanting to give a 5-star experience to the client. And you have to be able to run a good book of business and be profitable. There's some branch managers that don't know how to be profitable. They don't care that they run a loss. They're not willing to make those decisions. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I backstop those decisions. And so to me, it's a moral hazard to continue to allow that. Wow. So it's like I have a choice, right? And it's like if I'm not making the deselection, then who is it more punitive for? Them or me? And at the end of the day, it's me. Because the buck lies with me. Right. So when I have to make those decisions and you're making those decisions at an organizational level, I look at it like it is my money. That I'm, and it's not Nick's money, and I represent the company. And so it's about being fiscally prudent, fiscally smart with what you're doing. It's okay, fine, you make a mistake. But then if they continue to make the same mistake or they're unwilling to make the adjustments that are necessary to re-gear, then you are what you allow and tolerate. And so at that point, I just realized to be more honest with myself and opt in and opt out of that, and that's how I run, which is based on transparency. Right. So if you're transparent and you're honest in your approach, people can accept the truth. They may not like the truth, right? But at the end of the day, they can accept that. And so the facts are the facts. And at the end of the day, my job is to help people get to where they want to go with their career. And not everyone is unilaterally going to want the same things, right? But if that person wants to work less hours and make the same amount of money, that's fine. As long as they do it with integrity and they're profitable, right? A 5-star experience, then that's great, because ultimately their reflection of me, those clients, right, are a reflection of us. And if we're not doing that, I just look at it like I'm 39 years old and one bad review could last my whole lifetime on the internet. So at that point, to me, my name, our brand is everything. And I think if people got more fanatical about making sure that we go above and beyond in our industry to want to please the client it's not hard to get business.
Right, right.
Do the right thing.
Right.
I mean, they're like common things, but I think so often that we cut off our nose to spite our face, or we don't want to give money here or there to resolve the client's dispute, but are we really listening to the client? So, for me, I think, more than anything else, it's those pillars. And once you have that foundation in place, or vision of where you want to go, or what's important to you, or where your niche is at, right? Then it's not hard to scale, because then it's just putting the organizational structure in place and empowering the right people. And it's all about making sure you're hiring the right person, not more than anything else. Wow. If I have to go back and remediate your job, then I shouldn't have hired you in the first place. And if I can't trust you to make a decision on my behalf, then I shouldn't have hired you in the first place. And that doesn't matter on tenure. I've had to let go of people that were more tenured because they were complacent in a recent layoff, because we've had a production shift this year and we kept building capacity. Yeah. We had adjustments. Yeah. And of course, it was hard to make that decision, but at the end of the day, that was the right decision to make, because at the end of the day, my job is I have to interview every day for my job and show up. And if other people aren't going to do the same thing, well, guess what? John could fire me. Nick could fire me. Well, no one's job should be safe in that way. We should all give it 100% day in and day out.
I'm speechless right now. This is a masterclass on leadership right here. I'm dead serious. I want you to know that. I'm sitting here listening to you, and this should be bottled. This should be what every person who desires to be an impactful leader follows. And you just laid out this stuff like just boom, 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 boom. Why do so many managers allow apathy? Why do so many leaders allow people to stick around that are cancerous to the? I know they're afraid, but why is it like it's so obvious as you kind of hear you talk about it? And I look at people that leave people on the team for years that are destructive, and I can't figure it out. I can't figure out why fear would get in the way of sound judgment.
Because I think there's this hope dynamic, right? Like I hope that
come on, buddy, you might be able to make
right?
it.
Like, or if I do, it's like being in a bad marriage, right? Like, and then I think leaders, sometimes we take the onus on us to say, you know what, maybe we're the problem. And I think self-reflection and humility as a leader is a must, right? But at a certain point, when you've given someone every opportunity to succeed, and they've not wanted a course corrected, then it goes back to the same thing that I said earlier, which is it's a moral hazard to continue to allow that. And I think for me, having more responsibility and having to deal with the ramifications of potentially something going sideways, because when you're running cost centers and you have huge payrolls or whatever it is, and you're running on thinner margins, or like this year, we had margin compression. If that's not good business, and all of a sudden you go $60,000 in the hole, well, guess what? My P&L backstops that. So it hits me financially. So I just realized I never wanted to do bad business or lose, and I didn't want it to be punitive, right? And so I think as leaders, right, if we're creating more value than we're taking, if we're creating assets that our employees can use to help expand and grow their business, if we're loving on our people, right, and then we're paying our people well, then to me, there's no excuse. So to me, at that point, I've given everything in the kitchen sink at that point. So I understand at a certain point, if people could be you, they'd be you, right? But at the end of the day, it's about, and to some degree, yes, it is managing the mediocrity, but it's more important than that, shifting the bell curve, right? And the reality is that what could be completely Greek in someone's world, right, it could be something completely natural in another person's, right? And so ultimately, it's casting your vision for what you think you want your business to be. And I've been there as a business owner holding on in that aspect. And I just realized, look, I'm 39 years old. I have 3 kids under 5. And more than ever, with my wife being home with 3 kids, with all my kids being high strung, I need to be home with my wife, right? And in order for me to be successful in my marriage, and also in turn be the best dad that I could be, I need to be guarded with my time, and I need to be hyper selective about what I opt into, what I opt out on, who I hire, who I'm empowering, right? Because take money out of the equation, more than anything else, it's our time. Yeah. Right? And If I can't be here today and I'm concerned about my cell phone or what's going on with my clients, then I've failed as a leader, because I should have empowered the right people to handle it so that the last person, I'm the last resort. That's really what it is. You said, the one thing that you say to me is you should delegate yourself out of a role, and that you should focus on everything that makes you money and delegate everything out that doesn't make you money. So I applied that to what I'm doing, and it works really well if you take all those other things into account.
Yeah, I love it. So let's switch gears. A couple times you've mentioned creating a kind of attraction assets, creating kind of a value prop for your team that not only gets people to come to the company, but keeps people there. Talk about that, because I think that, when you mention leadership and you mention value, you just said give more than you take.
Yeah.
It's a simple concept, but it's really hard to execute for people that don't understand the reciprocity concept. So talk about asset creation, asset allocation.
I think when
asset attraction.
Sure. I think when you run any business and you're looking at the landscape of how we do business, ultimately, at the end of the day, XYZ Mortgage Company and ourselves, we all sell to the same people at roughly the same price. And really what differentiates us, which is one of our our important asset, is our people, right? And our culture, right? And then it's technology. And then what are we doing? What do we stand for as a company? Who are we supporting and believing in? What are we doing to give back to our community? And then how do we want to differentiate ourselves and position ourselves in the marketplace that is going to be a differentiator than everyone else out there, right? Yeah. And so, so for me, it's really apparent when I look at branch managers and I look at the turmoil and the struggle that I had as a branch manager, starting out and owning a company to then scaling and growing and getting up to 80 people at one point is that a lot of branch managers are just loan officers, and they're really good loan officers, and they get the position of being a quote branch manager because they have the production, but they do not know how to organizationally run their business and or structure it and or how to manufacture a file. And you see so many loan officers and or branch managers get in the minutia of manufacturing a file. And so when you talk to people or branch managers or anyone, loan officers, that inevitably decide to make a business decision, isn't because the values of their company are bad, it's because they have an operational problem more than anything else. And that operational problem is affecting them on a personal level that then is compromising them with their family or something else, and or they're losing referral partners. So to me, let's remove that from the equation, right? Let's just accept for a fact that I know how to manufacture a file better than anyone else, and I'm willing to put a guarantee and a service level agreement in place, and here's the KPIs that we're monitoring, right? And I can show you valid proof that, hey, as an organizational group, our average close time is 24 days. And if, you can lock on 30 days, and if we don't adhere to it, great. Guess what? We'll sit there and we'll cover the extensions, or we'll give a guarantee to the agent that says, hey, if we don't close at COE, we'll pay $250 a day to the seller on us. So if you can trust that and I can take that away, that's of value to a branch manager, because a lot of branch managers, they're great at recruitment or they're great at marketing, but they're not great at manufacturing. So for us, the first thing is, okay, how do we make a 5-star experience? Because if I can control that, regardless of anything else, and we can give a 5-star experience because we're doing the majority of the lift, now we're getting affinity. Now we're building branding, right? So for me, it was about building a operational pod that was customer facing. Because to me, the highest and best use of a loan officer is to go out into the field. It's to prospect with new referral partners, talk to existing clients, work their database. It is not to be in the weeds, calling on STIPs and or following up with the borrower in that regard. And so all of our operations people, they reach out to the client, they engage, they follow up with the real estate agent, and they own the file to completion. And our operational staff are paid on making sure that they provide a 5-star experience, meet the turn time durations that are in there. And so for us, it was building that, controlling that aspect, because that's something that I can recruit to that anyone can plug and play into. You're a loan officer and you're a branch manager and have 4 loan officers and have 2 LOAs, great, let me plug you into it. I have the capacity, let's go. All you need to do is originate, take a complete 1003, lock the file, get the minimum stuff, I'll own it, the rest of it all the way through. For a lot of loan officers, that's a relief.
Yeah, huge.
A huge relief, right? So that was the first thing, right? That was kind of the light bulb in my head. And then the next thing was, okay, what are we doing as a mortgage company to love on our clients? So much about our business is transactional because inevitably at the end of the day, the lump sum of that money is paid out on the commission. We're not residualized on it, right? So, having gone through, what, high trust teaches, which is creating a raging fan out of your client, it's like, okay, if I have the operational pod down and I have that down, the next part is client engagement. Right. And the one thing that I feel as mortgage companies that we do poorly is that we do not engage our clients in a way that's personal. Yeah. We make it impersonal, it's canned, it's clunky. The way we brand ourselves is that. So being sticky, emotional connectivity, getting your database to activate, getting that client to want to refer, making that client a raging fan. So, I've spent a lot of money on marketing. I went out and hired the top marketing company in Orange County that does Fortune 500 companies. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so I just realized, I'm like, look, I don't have to go to a marketing company anymore to get sticky marketing. Why don't I just go create my own marketing company in-house? So I went out and hired the head of marketing for Seven Gables Real Estate. I went out and hired my own graphics designers and people that do WordPress and people that do SEO and people that do ghostwriting. And it's like, okay, let's form a boutique mortgage company inside of Cardinal that is custom developing content that's specifically tailored towards the audience and demographic that you're going after. Because, for example, how you communicate with veterans, it's gonna be different than how you communicate with a affluent, sophisticated borrower, or how you communicate in California is different than Texas, right? So knowing your audience and how to communicate towards your audience and how to keep them engaged is everything. And so we've spent a lot of money to do that. And so what I've been able to do is you take a traditional branch where their focus is on their front end funnel, right? You got referral business that comes out of, real estate agent, financial planner, insurance agent. You got people that do lead gen, right? They're buying leads online, they're doing Zillow, they're doing LendingTree. Then you got your past clients, and then you got the clients, you got the referrals that come from your past clients. And it's about building out all those funnels and getting them to activate. In so many branches, they just focus on their front end funnel and they completely disregard the rest. So if we talk about dollarization and you're XYZ branch, and I'm just saying, hey, look, if 90% of your business comes from your front end funnel, but let me tell you, what if I could get your past client database to activate? And what if I could get you, if I could increase your business by 20 or 30%, what would that mean to you? That would be huge, right? So you go through the economics on that. That is what we're doing. So I'm hyper focused on wanting to make a client for life. And it comes down to the little things, right? Like you would think a loan officer would write a thank you card, right? Or send out a gift. Or when we send out gifts, a lot of companies brand it with their own logo on it, which I think is so tacky. Like when you send a gift, it should be a gift that stands on its own. And if you're not creating enough value to where your client goes and looks at whatever you're sending and doesn't think of you, then you're the problem, not the gift. So I mean, but it's about stickiness, right? And one-timing things. And so what we did? We went out. You can get a machine that does handwrites thank you cards. I went and bought the machines, so we have handwritten thank yous, and our clients think that it comes from the loan officer. Did it on behalf of them. We sent out gifts, Williams-Sonoma gifts, all kinds of stuff, right? It's different every time. It's not a Cutco knife, and it's about being sticky. And so I think it's that disruptive stuff, right? And doing that. And then the client's like, okay, I went this way. The client, the company loves on me. The loan officer loves on me. They're sending me relevant information that is keeping me engaged. It's not about constantly soliciting me. Right. It's like turn up the emotion, turn down the promotion, right? And so, that is what we're doing. And it's like when you have those two assets, those are differentiators. Huge. They are. And so then plugging anything into that is huge in terms of retention, right? As well as it is recruitment. And so, those two focus points in conjunction, for example, like doing coaching and other things to do that. But, those are two big things for us. And so, we're not perfect. We make a lot of mistakes, but I think we're onto something. And for us to be able to grow as much as we have, and it's not because we had people quit, it's because we deselected and fired people. So when you think about 2020 and you think about COVID and people being strained to have to work from home, and the amount of pressure that was put on us in 2020 to be sitting here standing today and have all my operations people, have all the branches that I want to have, and then still be able to add and grow, I feel good about where we're at.
You ought to. You ought to. It's huge. Huge, huge, huge. So take us home on this idea, because you've mentioned several of your value propositions, and I would just be interested in your commentary. We use the word manufacturing alone. We use the word emotional connection. We talk about technology. Tell me the Jonathan Halstead thinking on technology and humanity and balancing that in today's world.
Look, I think technology is great, but I think the one thing that we as an industry have struggled with is finding the right technology where everyone embraces it and it becomes fluid within our vernacular and our culture. And it's about automating. I think ultimately at the end of the day, the person that can get to the point of automating the process, and when I say automated the process, I'm talking about the manufacturing of a file. It's about meeting the client anywhere that they want to do business, being able to do it in real time, and making it as streamlined as possible. And so it's having the right tech that you can implement that ultimately the byproduct either gives you scale and capacity, but more importantly makes a better end experience for the client. Like using Flowify or Dropbox and then going into this system and that system. I think that's noise, right? So the more you can streamline it down to one singular point, the better that you can make that experience. And the same goes on the origination side for the tools for the loan officer. And there's a lot of great tools out there. It's how we integrate those tools day in and day out. And a lot of putting those tools in place that are passive, right? So, HomeBot, I think, is a great tool, right? Yeah. Clients log in, they see how much the value of their house is. It's got you branded up there. It knows where the rates are at. You don't need to tell your client to go refi because it's in there and the client's looking at their value and their equity in their house and they're going, what should I do? It's like, it's passive things like that, right? I think the more you can inform people and keep people educated and keep them engaged, it's that connectivity aspect. And so, I think for us, more than anything else, it's about doing great business, giving a 5-star experience, but also it's about creating a great experience for our employees, right? It's not about infinitely working more, right? It's about the quality of work that we do, being effective while we're working, and having a really good work-life balance. And for some people, I can appreciate wanting to work 60 hours a week, and occasionally I do, but for me, it's my family. I mean, the singular most proudest thing that I did was have 3 kids. Like, that to me is my legacy. That's more important to me than anything else. And yes, being there for them, to drop them off to school, to pick them up from school, taking my son to play golf, do those things. So more than anything else, it's about using technology in a way that provides a better quality of life, right? And so for me, that's what it's all about. Like, do we add something that's going to improve the loan originator's quality of life, the operations person's quality of life, our clients? Are we going to give a better experience? Otherwise, we should deselect more than select or opt in. Right. And so I think, it's being honest, on those fronts with, I think we all want to sell that shiny toy, but more than anything else, it's how we implement that toy and how we execute on it. So to me, I think, look, technology is great. I think, look, our company is passionate about automating the process and creating an amazing experience for the client, and I'm committed to that. But I think this is where the industry's headed, right? And so if we can get rid of not all of operations, but if you could automate 70% of that process, that's going to do one of 2 things, right? It's either more revenue that goes to then provide better rates to clients, provide more compensation to loan officers, provide better experiences in terms of what we're doing. So I'm excited about where we're going with that because it provides a different playing field to compete. But at the end of the day, people are about relationships, connectivity, and they want to go to someone that they know, trust, and love, that's going to set them straight and help guide them. Because let's be honest, school doesn't teach you how to balance a 401k or what a mortgage is. College doesn't. My MBA didn't. So, I mean, at the end of the day, there's always going to be a need for a loan originator, and it's up to us to guide the client and to get the client to be a raging fan.
Bam.
Bam.
Wow. I'm like just, oh my word. Seriously.
Yeah?
No, I mean, I'm looking at you and I'm so proud of you. I've been in your life for a while, and what you just did is you gave everybody a master class on leadership, and you did it with a spirit of just confidence, but humility and transparency, and I know what you've come from. I've known, I've known you long enough to see that this is a transformed human. You really, really, really. I'm dead serious. I don't even. I know this is being recorded, but I'm just sitting here going, "What just happened?" Because that's magic, dude. That is just magic. Thank you so much for sharing your heart.
Of course, and I appreciate the opportunity to get to speak. And I'm not great at speaking, so.
Well, nobody that's watching this knows that. I can tell you that. I can tell you that right now.
But I mean, I've always asked you those really hard questions, right? And when I asked you those questions, you always gave me a very honest and unadulterated answer, right?
Yeah.
And I think there's one thing that I'd leave it when it comes to people, right? If something's, I remember at one point I was kind of like struggling in my marriage when we had like kids and all this other stuff, and I was seeking out advice. And the one thing that resonated to me that I heard that then I kind of apply to other facets of my life is he said to me, he goes, look, if it's important to her, then it's important to you. And I needed to hear it that way, right? Like, so if something's important to you, right, important to that person, you're going to make it a priority if you really want to make it a priority. And I think whether it's our staff, right, whether it's our friends in our life, whether it's our clients, right, it's what's important to you, right? And I think that's kind of, how I worked backwards from it. And, I'm still going to ask you really hard questions.
Well, there's no greater joy that I have than watching people ask hard questions and using the answer and going to the next level. And you've done that.
I wouldn't be where I'm at if I wasn't for you.
Oh, thank you, buddy.
Of course.
I wouldn't feel fulfilled if it wasn't for you.
Thanks, Todd.
Awesome. All right, welcome back to our third session for our third day at Sales Mastery. We are focusing on the leadership trifecta, and what that means is we're having discussions with guys and gals that are leading businesses, and anywhere from what they're doing operationally to what they're doing from a recruiting standpoint to what they're doing from a retention standpoint, their stories, their successes, the things they do well, the lessons they've learned. And our goal throughout this entire day is to just help you become a better leader of you and then a better leader of others. Our guest is a very, very cool guy. I've just I met him recently, and he is a new, fresh face to the Sales Mastery stage. His name is Ippolito Garcia. How did I do? Ippolito.
Pretty close.
Ippolito Garcia.
Just call me Hip.
Yeah, just call him Hip. So Hip, welcome to Sales Mastery, man.
Nice
Good to
be
have you here. Thanks for flying in from Chicago. Right. Yeah. And so you're a non-producing branch manager, and I think it'd be interesting for people to kind of hear a little bit of your story and how you got into the mortgage business and where you came from. And let's set the tone for that for 5 minutes or so and go from there.
Well, story is I grew up in a pretty rough neighborhood in the city of Chicago. My parents got divorced around, I was 15 years old. I was going to college right out of high school. Didn't know exactly what to do with my life until I met some guys in Puerto Rico while I was with my father at a wedding that were real estate agents, and they started talking about how they needed a Spanish-speaking lender in Chicago. They said I was great with math. This is something that you should really do and look into. Funny story, the girl that I was talking to at the time, her father owned a mortgage company, and she introduced me to him, and I became a mortgage broker. I became a mortgage broker till about 2008, so from 2002 to 2008, I was a mortgage broker. In 2008, I decided to go into the full service banking world as a mortgage originator. Within a year, I was in President's Club. A year later, I was asked to become a lending manager At the time, I was told I could actually produce. Um, that dream only lasted for about 2 months. Then I was asked to stop producing, not compete against my own folks. So I was like, okay, I can do this. I can coach other people to increase their production, and I did. I took a team, and at that company, we were closing about 300 plus million a year, which I like to say it's, in my opinion, it's a little easier when you got foot traffic coming in a bank.
Yeah.
Around 17-ish, I was itching for something different, something that I can say I actually worked even harder for, something that would be out of this world. And I figured starting from zero and leaving to a full, just straight mortgage lender with no foot traffic, and starting that is a challenge. And I figured, let's do this. I'll start with zero, folks. I'll just move right over and figure it out from there. I did that at the same time as I was part of the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. I was part of the Chicago chapter, which is the largest chapter in the country. And I was part of their board of directors. I did that. 50% of my day went to that. The other 50% went to work. So it's extremely hard to start something new while doing something else as well. So
Right.
it was a big challenge, but circled down to 2.5 or 3 years later. We are on pace to close 200 million from a team of zero.
Wow.
Producing. On pace to close 200 million, 90% purchase volume. So we tend not to focus on refis. They're great, but we try to make sure that customer service is our main focus, and the partner service is even more important.
Right.
And so we focus on that, and that's pretty much where I'm at today.
So it's a it's a great story. So 23, you became a broker, and you hung out there until 2008, and then almost 10 years in a foot traffic large bank brand, and now starting something from scratch. And let's talk about the 200 million, and let's talk about really kind of like, because I don't think you have a pretty tight team, and you're not producing. So let's just kind of get into it. What were some of the first moves or some of the big leadership decisions that you made when you were starting this?
So I was really focused. So I have a vision. My vision when I came to this company, to Caliber Home Loans, was to focus on the Latino community. I've always felt that there's not many mortgage lenders that really service the community the right way.
Right.
You have a lot of people in the Hispanic community that don't trust banks, don't trust lenders, and a lot has to do with education. So part of being with NARA is to educate the community, educate the realtors, educate the lenders to help educate the community.
Right.
But at the same time, I said, okay, my vision also has to be, let me recruit the right people that have a great heart, that will build a great culture, that could turn around and service that community the right way. And so my focus was not to rush in hiring, but to find the right folks with the great heart. And I see that till today with my folks. I don't have a huge team. I have 2 offices. Between the 2 offices, I have 15 employees. Out of those 15 employees, I have 9 originators, 6 assistants. And so you do the math, 9 originators, 200 million. It's way above the national average per LO, not just on units, but on volume. So.
Right. Okay, so I think we need to dive into this because, a lot of people get into leadership, they get into management because they're top producers. I remember, my first kind of transition into branch management. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't understand leadership really. I was a top producer, I was the number 1 guy in my company, and I really learned some lessons hard, and some of the hard lessons were about recruiting, about hiring, not having necessarily a disciplined process to onboarding, things like that. You have a very disciplined I think that's a fair word to use, a very disciplined kind of hiring process, and it manifests, it sounds like it manifests itself into greatness for a team at that volume level with only 15 people. Can you walk through, I was very intrigued when I started learning about you, I was very intrigued about the discipline. There's just the slow approach to doing it right. So anybody listening that might not be having a great experience as a manager, or maybe questioning should they be in leadership, giving up producing versus being a non-producer, what are the things that are on your heart to talk about as regards to building the right way?
Making sure you find the right people, I think is extremely important. People with great energy, people with great drive, people with great compassion, people that are willing and open to learn different things, new ways. And you can't determine that on your first interview with a person over coffee. I think that it takes time. It's no different than you when probably you met your wife. You had to date her first, right? Get to know her and find out whether she was the one.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing is with a recruit and a person that you want them to be part of your life. And when you recruit somebody, they're going to be part of your life. They're going to be in your life daily. So you want to make sure that you really love this person, that this person is extremely very energetic, because that's going to help create a culture within the team. The moment that you hire, and the reason to me it's extremely important to hire slowly, is the moment you hire the wrong person that doesn't bring the right energy, the right vibe, the right mind, if they're not positive, it can affect the rest of your team. It's like sometimes it becomes a cancer, right? And I'm not going to sit here and say I'm perfect, right? Because no one can ever be perfect on hiring that perfect recruit. People will make mistakes. You make many mistakes. I make mistakes all the time. I've made them in the past year, but recognizing when you make that mistake and trying to correct it, one of two ways. You either try to help that person change, you try to help that person grow, or if it gets too bad where that person sucks so much of your energy and time, it affects the rest of the team.
Yeah.
Not just from a support standpoint, from a coach, mentor, friend, but also from operations. You know how that goes, right? You have an individual that sucks a lot of resources from your operations. It affects the rest of the team. So you got to be able to take your time, find that person with the right mindset to join you. If you don't do that, you've lost the battle.
Yeah. So when we think about hiring right, and we think about, I love those words, energy and mindset and attitude. And I remember early in my career, somebody said that a team is only as strong as its weakest link. And when you hire wrong, it's so important to realize that you need to unhire faster than you hired wrong. And a mentor of mine told me the best time to fire somebody is the first time you think about it, because it really doesn't get any better if it's the wrong fit. And I think that the proclivity for most managers is to sell the company and to talk about why we're great. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's at the wrong time that really happens for most. They do it too soon in the interview process. What's a disciplined hiring process look like to you? How many interviews? What's the vibe? Who else gets involved?
So I try to spend the first 30 minutes with an individual, and sometimes not even just the first 30 minutes. Maybe that first date is really trying to get to know them.
Yeah.
Not just digging deep into their personal life, the people that they know, the partnerships that they have, because it kind of gives me a little bit of a background for me to work on and go back, sit in my office, and do some research on those folks. So when I'm there getting to know someone, they tell me about their wife and kids, how their life is. You'd be surprised on how deep you could get into with some folks, right?
I think that's important.
Yeah, and that's important because some of the things that they tell you, they don't realize that the way they treat their own family members, the way they talk about certain personal things, when you're sitting there getting just to know them, you're kind of like, wow, this person doesn't have a great heart. Is this a person you want on your team? If they can do that to their own family, like seriously, so it just amazes me what you get to know about some folks. And don't get me wrong, some folks do make mistakes.
Yeah.
And people learn from their mistakes in life, and that's okay. But you can tell the difference when it's a mistake or this is someone's.
It's part of their character, yeah.
It's part of their character.
Yeah.
So I'm very careful with that. And then once I get to know them, I go back to the drawing board, then I go sit down and I kind of start reaching out to some of the folks that we may have mutual connections to. And I don't specifically call those folks and say, hey, can you tell me about this person? It's more like, hey, I just ran across a guy I just met. He talked great about you. And then they're like, oh, yeah, I do know them. I know them through this. And then they start telling me all about this person. It's like you just let them run their mouth.
Yeah.
Let them run their mouth. And then you kind of get to know a little bit more about what that person knows about the recruit that you're getting to know. And you don't stop there. You go to the next person and do the same thing there. At that point, if you feel that you have someone with great character, great energy, then at that point you invite them to meet again. That moment, I start digging a little deeper. Now I want to get to know into their ethics on how they do their business, how they do what they do a little more, just so that I could really understand how they run their business. Because they can have great character, but if they're not willing to change the way they run their business as far as their business model, how they work with their assistant, how they work with their processor, how they work with their underwriting, it could actually affect the rest of the team. Right. So at that point, I'm getting a little deeper with that. Let them talk, get to know them a little more. Okay, then I go. I don't want to seem desperate either. So
oh, right. That's a huge point.
So as soon as you start talking about the company, you seem desperate. So it's kind of like I just let it be. And then
what a
at
great
that point,
insight.
I just wait. Then I just wait for them to start asking questions. Hey, by the way, how do you guys do this? How do you guys do that? Then I start answering those questions. So now they're asking me questions.
Right.
And now I get to feel that they're starting to get interest in the company. And sure enough, at that point, they can see whether we're a great fit or not. And there's going to be some people that you meet that you feel they're great people, but they're not a great fit. That's okay. There's a lot of those. And then there's going to be folks that do have that energy and that vibe that you just feel right away. I remember my first hire in the industry. I don't know if I can mention his name or not.
Sure.
Danny Shenderovich. I'm going to give him a big shout out. He was my first hire in the industry, and I remember when he came to the company, and I was told by my manager, don't hire that guy. Literally, that's what he said at the time. Don't hire that guy. And I was like, no. I'll put my money on this guy because the energy and the character this guy brought, to this day, we are one of the closest friends.
Wow.
He went with me for my 40th birthday. The guy has been a pretty damn good producer since I met him. When I met him, yeah, he didn't have no volume, nothing to prove, right? With W-2 at the point, we had to verify all that stuff for the company. But I tell you, within the first month that I got him on board, he took 21 loans.
Whoa.
His first month. And I said, see, I told you so. I knew this guy had the energy. This guy had it in him. Do I make my mistakes? Yeah. I make my mistakes. I've gotten the ones where I feel good about them, and then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, this person's gonna need a little bit more help.
Yeah.
And I anticipated, and that's okay because it gives me practice. It doesn't keep me stagnant on the side. It kind of helps me polish up my skills and get into nitty gritty and have fun with them and work. And I think you also get a thrill and a pleasure when you see someone grow.
100%. And that's really what leadership's about, is watching people want to grow.
So yeah.
Yeah. So when we think about the kind of the two stages so far, getting to know them, asking questions, and then kind of doing the research, and then kind of coming back, going a little bit deeper, and doing some more research, listening to them ask the questions. It reminds me of the hiring process that I was taught, and it's like the first interview, make it about learning about them. The second interview, it's about you guys together. And the third interview is kind of what the offer looks like, what you expect, and what the agreements are on what we do together. And in between those three, you know, to plug in, you know, my ops manager maybe to do an interview or maybe do a social style validation on them. But there's nothing better than feeling the person, right? What do you do? So yes, we all make mistakes. Yes, we all have hired wrong. We all probably have some do-overs that we would like to go through. But what's your philosophy now when maybe you get to a point where you're like, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure at the hiring process.
I'm not sure if I should.
If I should hire them.
There's just a little bit of doubt.
Well, when I have a little bit of doubt, it's okay to loop in other folks.
Yeah.
So I do loop in ops managers to get to know the person and dig a little deeper as well. But I also tag team sometimes with some of my colleagues. That's the one thing I love about the company I'm at, the culture between us colleagues, my counterpart. I have a great counterpart in Michigan, and easy phone call. Hey, you mind talking to this guy? Getting to know them and telling me what you think, because it's also really good to get another set of eyes. I've also, believe it or not, have brought my wife in.
Yeah.
Which is, a lot of people don't know that if you bring your spouse with you and take that recruit out to dinner, your spouse might have a different perception.
You think?
They'll tell you like it is, right?
Yeah.
I do rely on other people's thoughts and opinions when I get in that little when I'm a little skittish, and if I feel really that doubtful about something, I just won't hire at all. I just pull back completely and just wait until I feel that that's the right person. And a lot of times, not too long ago, I have a perfect example where I did that. I was interested in hiring a sales manager who felt great energy from the get-go. But the more I dug into him, something just didn't sit right. Sure enough, when I decided to pull away and not move forward with the individual, I got to see that the person literally, after meeting with me, got hired by another company, was there for 5 months, left there, was at another company for 7 months, left there, was at another company for 4 months. I think right now they're like on the 4th or 5th company since I've talked to them. Wow. So, that was a good judgment call, just following my gut at that moment.
Yeah.
Not following through with me for that hesitant. I think it's good that you just, it's no different, right? If you would have felt differently about your wife in the beginning,
We wouldn't have had a second date, right?
Second date.
Yeah.
I don't want to date her anymore.
Yeah. Well, I think it's so interesting because if we go to the other side, and let's say you did hire that guy, and you think about he's on his 5th company or whatever it is in the time from when you passed and you didn't pass, the havoc that individual can actually bring into the company is pretty severe. And we talk about drag down costs, and we talk about people that are still employed but disengaged. We talk about the cost of culture. When you have the wrong person, you can have 15 people on board, you can have one that's wrong, and the 14 can be compromised. Not to mention what you said earlier about just ops efficacy and efficiency and providing great experiences. And so, I think that probably the greatest pain that leaders have is when they start to realize, the cost of disengagement, the cost of performance reviews, the cost of, putting them on an improvement plan, the cost of, measuring whether they do that or not. And it just keeps going and going and going and going. And so we're better off, I think, one of our rules is kind of like, if in doubt, pause. And I had a hiring psychology that I talked to probably a year after I got into leadership. And he said, one of the great questions that you can ask yourself is, given this person, everything I know about them to this point, how would I feel if they went to work for my biggest competitor? And it was just an interesting filter, because if that could be like, I'm not sure I'd like that, or I'm not sure that would make a big deal. It's kind of just one of those bellwether kind of just filters, right? And then I always trust intuition of others. I always, I think it's important as leaders to learn how to go with your own gut, but I think it's important to get some validation. And I think that I think there's a lot of value in, I know at least in my life with Deb, there's a lot of, she has like forecasted train wrecks with people like a year before they've happened.
So you've done the same thing
Yeah.
about your wife then, right?
Yeah. And there's, truthfully, just to be totally vulnerable, there's a couple people that she didn't think we should do anything with, and I thought we should, and she was right. She was right. So, years ago, this. I hope this comes out the right. Years ago, I thought about writing a book entitled "Men, Listen to Your Wife," and the publisher liked the idea, but didn't think it would go over. And I said, no, I think it would go over well. I think the women would buy the book. Lots of women would buy the book, and it wasn't about anything other than the fact that I had made a lot of mistakes by not listening to my wife. And it became a chapter of a book, but I think what we want to do in leadership, there's perfection is dangerous, progress is helpful. I think we want to learn how to minimize the big mistakes, and they're usually human capital mistakes. They're usually hiring the wrong people. And so when you now look at energy, and you look at heart, and you look at fire, and you look at drive, you have done a massively good job coaching your people up. So talk about developing your salespeople. What does it look like in your life as a non-producing manager? How are you adding value to your team? Why do they stay with you? What are some of the things that you can advise everybody that's watching this to really understand the importance of pouring into people? Because you do that well.
Yeah, so you do have to support your people. You do have to support, and every individual is different,
Yeah.
right? You can support people in different ways. A lot of times is, with my bigger producers, is identifying where their weak points are and helping them work through those challenges so that they can increase their production. I had a mortgage originator where, when I hired him, had only closed about $6 million a year. He is closing now. He's on pace for $36 million, and I hired him 2 years ago. So he's doing the most, 97% purchase, by the way.
Wow.
He's doing the most that he's ever done, and by all means, it's not me. He's worked really hard. This is all him. He's put his heart and energy into him. But what he's had is an open mind to listen to some of the feedback that I've given him on how to grow his business. Sometimes LOs will take things all on their own instead of hiring support for specific things that he wouldn't do well. You can get someone to do it for you a little better.
Right.
In other situations when I've had a really brand new producer, more to the, not necessarily a brand new producer to the industry, but more of a brand new hunter, so to speak, where he came from a bank footprint, came to this world, and I actually just put him in coaching with the Todd Duncan group because it helps me with my time management too.
Yeah.
I can't take everything on my own, and sometimes with someone that's a little newer, a little fresh, needs a little bit more hand-holding, so they get the benefit of two coaches. They get the Todd Duncan group, and then they get me. We work together, and that works out really, really well. With other individuals, it's more of going out to networking events and helping them build relationships out in the industry, that type of support. I just last week went out to lunch with a big real estate agent that one of my producers just obtained from, they were a listing agent, by the way, and he was obviously doing the loan for the buyer, and the listing agent loved him so much that she decided
Beautiful.
to use him for herself. She's like, I love him so much, now I want to use him for my whole team. She has a team. And I'm like, this is awesome. This is going to take you from that $36 million mark to 50 million, like
that.
in no time.
Yeah.
Right? And you're going to keep growing, right? And he goes, do me a favor, come with me, and let's show her that we really appreciate her, and go to lunch with her. So we go to lunch, and we're ordering food, and we're ordering dessert, and we're talking, and we're laughing, and it was so funny. I started dancing with the realtor because she was talking about how she likes to dance salsa, and she goes, "Oh my God, I got my own coach I got my free dance lessons here," and I started having fun with her, and she was like, "This is awesome." We left there, and sure enough, as soon as we left there, she
Done.
just nonstop. She literally, I gave her my number if she's ever needed anything, and she sent me some video messages last Friday on promoting the Caliber brand together with hers. So she has her Remax on the shirt. She goes, by the way, we're going to put Caliber Home Loans and the Yellow's name on there with his phone number for branding purposes. And she gave me the examples, and it was so, I just loved it. I thought that was one of the best success stories ever, because it started from a listing agent, small relationship, one deal, to getting to lunch. And he's put a lot of work into that, and if you don't go there and you support him,
Right.
and you don't have his back, your folks are not going to continue to grow. In other cases, you have to support them in the sense where you have to coach them on structuring certain deals, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Some deals are tougher than others, and sometimes you got to jump in and look at it with a different view, a different mindset,
Yep.
and show them how structuring something right would make your life much easier
Right.
down the road. So there's a lot of different ways where I support my folks, but it's a lot harder if I would have been producing. And at the beginning, when I got into the leadership role, selfishly, I wanted to continue to produce. But my first year of helping other people, there was just so much more gratification in helping them grow that I said, you know what? I can do this. I may not be producing myself, but I'm producing through them by helping them grow. And if I can devote my time to them, then that's all that really matters.
It's huge. It's a huge decision when people understand that you can manage assets, but you have to lead people. And when you lead, and you lead from the heart, really, you talk about your hiring standards, and you look at where your energy is, and you have this sparkle about you. You have this kind of subtle charisma, and you can tell your heart just in even the first conversation we had. And that's appealing to people. People care when they know somebody that's leading them really cares. And there's, I think it's interesting to look at what your motivation is in anything that you do. Your anybody watching this, and to watch people win because of what you've been able to do. You go to bed at night, and I feel it. It's just like I pinch myself sometimes, because we get to show up as leaders, and the follower is ripe right now for change, and we get to step in and make that happen. There's no better feeling. Yeah. So where are you going to go from here? What's the vision?
I do want to take a new challenge in the next coming years. I do want to grow the Chicago market footprint much bigger than, we have 2 offices now with a smaller team. But, supporting people isn't easy. You can't support a lot of people at the same time. So the new vision is scouting out the right branch managers, sales managers that can build their own team. Maybe I can replicate mini-me's. Right?
Mini-me's.
Mini-me's that have the same heart and can lead with the heart as well, and help coach some other individuals and help keep growing the communities that we serve in Chicago. I do want to diversify the team a bit more. Like I said in the beginning, I focused on the Latino community because that's where I grew up,
Right.
and I felt that the distrusting community needed good representation out there from the financial world
Right.
that would truly gain their trust back. And I feel that I've done that. But Chicago's not just a Latino community, right?
Right.
It's all types of races. You have Asian, you have African American, you have Italian.
Everything.
Right. So before I came to Caliber, I had a very diverse team. When I mean very diverse, you could probably name a nationality, and I had that. I had recruited someone that was part of that. And I think that in a bank footprint, that was needed because you
Right.
have different kind of customers that come through. But at the mortgage lender level, because I came with that mindset, that was my focus, that was my goal. I feel proud of what the team has done. You know, they are family. We just had a barbecue in my house.
I love
They
it.
were all over. I feel that we have great momentum going on, and I think now is time to start reverse diversifying the team.
I like that. I like the reverse diversification, starting off on the Latino and going backwards. So this has been really, really fun. We've got about a minute or two to wrap it up. So if somebody came to you and said, hey, Hip, give me the biggest piece of advice that I need to know as a emerging branch manager, what would you share?
No different than when you mentioned earlier. Hire slowly, let go people quickly. I literally just went through that not too long ago, and it's the biggest. I know that sometimes people focus on the numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's a lot of production. If I get rid of that person, you'd be surprised how much more production, how much quicker the rest of your team ramps up when you let the cancer go.
So, and I think that is such an important point, because I believe, and I'll just be interested in your feedback. You know, when you have, how many LOs do you have?
I have 9.
9. So you have 9 LOs, and there's one person, just one person that's like, those 9 LOs, the 8 LOs, watching the one, and they understand the one is a detriment to even though they might be producing at a high level. The longer that a leader allows somebody that's disruptive to stay,
Others will try to do the same.
and the less respect they have for you as a leader.
Correct.
And I think the fear for most leaders is they don't want to let somebody that's a good producer go because they're afraid to lose the production, when in fact, letting the good producer go, that's suppressing the culture. All that business will be filled in by everybody right behind him or her.
Correct.
100%.
Correct.
Yeah.
And sometimes people get worried that that producer might leave and they're going to try to take your folks. And trust me, they've tried,
Yeah.
right? But there's always a strategy behind that. I tell folks, I'm like, you know, for example, a lot of times when you have one of those producers, it could be because of foul quality, and they're like, they may be great sales folks, but a mess when it comes to turning things in.
Right.
It creates that cancer that's really bad. So, you know, I just had that happen recently, and what I did instead is, you know, folks that were telling me that they were getting recruited by that individual that was leaving, I said, okay. I said, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you cover their pipeline now that they're gone? Once they saw that, game over.
Game over. Right. That's awesome. Well, you are a delightful guy, man, and I'll tell you, I loved having you here, and I love your story. I love your heart. I love how you lead. I love your desire to help people win, and I love the idea of building it right. And I think that's the big takeaway for me. So, talk a little bit about, as we wrap up, just kind of a different track. You mentioned coaching. You mentioned, you know, working with Hope and having some people on your team. What's been the value of our coaching, to help you as a manager win?
I think it's more time saving, helping me personally, or helping the
Both. Yeah.
Okay. For me personally, I think it's great when sometimes, as you know, whether you're a CEO, you know, an executive, or just a branch manager, non-producing branch manager, sometimes you feel that you may be alone, right? And it's hard, you know, when everyone's running at 100 miles an hour in the industry, to always talk to others and mastermind. I think that the biggest benefit for me is the masterminding sessions that you get with your coach, where you also learn from other elite folks in the group, which, by the way, just by meeting the folks in the group that are part of the Sales Mastery, the energy was just intense. I was just like, wow, these guys are amazing. But every single individual is different, and they always have a different nugget that they bring to the table. And for me, that is valuable, because to me, learning is key. Just because you do something great doesn't, if you stop there, that's it, you're done.
Right.
You got to continue learning and continue to grow. And I feel that for me, having a coach with that accountability piece and keeping me on track helps a lot. And then when it comes to my loan officer, it helps me with time management so that I can focus on other things while someone else helps coach my LO with certain folks. It doesn't mean that I take my hand off.
Yeah.
It just means that I have additional support, and they do value that. They value the fact that they have additional support. They have someone that's, holding them accountable and following up with the activities that they're doing on a weekly basis. And then they have me to help support them on the street, go out with them. If the coach is telling them, hey, you got to meet with a real estate agent this week, and I get a phone call, hey, Hip, I've been trying to get in this office. I told my coach that I'm going to try to get in there. I know a lot of folks, so they give me a call. I'm like, okay, I'll get you in there. I'll work with you. Let's work together.
Yeah.
Now make a call to that office, get in, and and there I go, supporting. I'm tag teaming.
Yeah.
So it really works. It really does work.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate your time at Mastery this year. You've made a really big impact, I believe, on the people that are really looking at. I mean, I see so many people that are unhappy leaders, and there's just so much joy to be a happy leader. You get to love on people and make their dreams come true. And I think you've proven that that's the spark that you've built your brand around, and it's exciting.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure being here with you, and it's been a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. We'll do more together, I'm sure. Awesome. All right, guys. So if you're thinking right now that you are a manager and you want this kind of life and you want to make an impact, I just want to encourage you to do a couple things. Number one is have the LOs that you want to help win. Just sign up for a free coaching call. I mean, it's super straightforward. There's no strings attached. 30 minutes with one of our certified master coaches can really help you help your people win at scale. And to Hip's point, it would allow you to be more of a servant leader to help them where the coaches are telling them they need help. And then also our High Trust Sales Academy is coming live for the first time in 2 years to Dallas, Texas in December. We're going to be in Dallas the first week of December. This is the most important program I do. It is the playbook for mortgage originators to build the business and the life of their dream. It's me, a couple hundred people, 40 hours of work, and a 12-week accountability plan. Check it out as we continue through Sales Mastery 2021.
A lot of people think that coaching is expensive. Let me tell you what's more expensive. Not getting coached and losing the revenue that you could be making. Coaching is not expensive. Coaching is an investment. You need to think that way. Marty, you are a mind, a math mind. You've got a lot of thinking around this. What is your sense on why people think it's too expensive?
Well, I think, you've got cost and you've got value.
Right.
Okay. And so cost is, literally just how much something costs, and then value is how much it's worth. And your example of $70 million, if I'm doing my math right, even if you're earning 50 basis points on $70 million, that's $350,000 a year. 100 basis points is $700,000 a year. We're talking about a cost of $800 a month. And I think what people need to understand from the cost standpoint is the cost is literally, because I've been part of the conversations of how to determine that, it's literally the lowest that Todd could possibly make it, because you have someone on the other end of that phone whose time is very valuable, who's very successful, who can make way more money in that amount of time than what they're earning through your coaching fee. It's actually the coach, and the reason the coaches that you have are so phenomenal is because they're not doing it for money. They're doing it because they want to give back, because just like I had someone help me get there, they want to help someone else get there. And the cost of it is literally the minimum it can be just to justify that person in their head to invest that time back. And that's where that number comes from. So yes, obviously we want you to have an investment, because the reason Wally was able to add 70 million is because he took that advice and those calls and went and implemented it. I've had those same conversations with countless other people who did not, but he was willing to do it because he had the money invested, the time invested, and all that stuff. So there is that, but I just wanted people to understand that that truly might be the biggest bargain or discount or value or whatever on the planet right now.
Well, you think about it really at a high level, it might take 2 loans extra for the year to cover the entire cost of coaching.
It's not even question. Like now I think back to when my mentor said, well, if it's worth anything, it's worth that. Like I was an idiot for asking the question that I decided it was too expensive for. And by the way, I paid more back then than it is now. And now I'm like, well, God, if somebody asked me that question, I'd be like, well, yeah, if it's worth anything, it's worth that. Are you kidding me?
I mean, look at any pro athlete out there.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got physical coaches, dietitian coaches, they've got mental coaches, coaches at the wazoo, right? And they make millions of dollars a year and so on and so on. The coaching to me really shortens that learning curve.
Oh, huge.
Can I have went out there and try to learn everything that Marty taught me? I probably would have figured out a way to win.
Eventually.
But his coaching and his mentorship and that time invested that he invested in me, I was able to accomplish the annual mortgage review department, the client concierge team, within 4 months, bring it to life. And now we're at mastery stage of it, but we do that really, really great.
Yeah.
And that ROI on that, and he's able to shorten that learning curve just immensely.
It's awesome. All right. Thanks, guys, for being here. It's always a pleasure to hang out with good buddies that I love and trust and believe in. And thanks for adding value to our industry always, and for being open about it and being real. It's been great. All right, welcome back to our final session of the day outside of our VIP session. The whole theme today has been the leadership trifecta, and we've been talking about operational excellence, we've been talking about value-added recruiting, we've been talking about high trust retention, and what we decided to do was get together 4 really, really great friends who, in all of their own right, have earned really, really great results following
these principles, leadership trifecta. And we just decided for the end of the day to maybe spend 75 minutes, 80 minutes with you guys talking about those three things at various different levels, from ownership to mentoring to branch management to regional and all that goes along with that. So I've got my good friend Trevor Hammond, who's one of our certified high trust coaches. Good to have you here, Trevor.
Happy to be here.
Yep. And I got obviously, she doesn't need an introduction, my dear friend Linda Davidson, who's been my sidekick on Mastery since we brought it back in 2011, for sure. And, one of the early persons that was impacted dramatically by the Mastery experience. I've got my dear friend RJ Crosby down here, who the word on the street is he is the guy to go to now for all of the insight to operational excellence. What he has done is going to blow your mind, and now his company's using him almost everywhere to try to replicate what he's created. RJ, it's like, and I'll never forget the 2005 letter that you sent me and coming out of Inner Circle. And of course, Tim Broadhurst was part of Inner Circle that time, and for a long time. And Tim, Tim's the story, one of the stories of all stories to come out of the High Trust Sales Academy in 1997. It's actually called TLOPS, right? Loan
Exactly,
Officer
yep.
Productivity School. And we had so much cool conversation there. And if you don't know the Tim Broadhurst story, came out of the academy in December, built the business for 90 days. In the fourth month after the academy, I think you originated like 52 deals, $12 million or so.
Exactly, yeah.
More volume in 1 month
Yeah.
than he enclosed in the entire previous year. So all these guys and my dear friend Gal Linda, we are high trust. I mean, we've built our careers on the fabric of high trust leadership, and we're going to have a great discussion. So let's jump into it. I'm going to go down to that end of the couch, and this is an RJ and kind of a Tim dialogue. The thing we were talking about before we decided exactly how this thing was going to flow was that at the end of the day, operational excellence probably is everything. It's probably everything to an organization. And so it's a really big deal. You guys have figured this out. RJ, I'm going to start with you because it's just like, it's what is happening. I think for you, most people don't experience as leaders. So tell us just, how did you get to the level you're at thinking about this cool, just game-changing concept?
Yeah, well, I mean, really, it started at, the event on my first day in the business, where this guy was sharing his full systems, and Jim McMahon, of course, who now I'm partnered with at Benchmark, Stephen Marshall, yourself. And so from there went my journey to just really swipe and adapt. And not everything, right? You got to pick and choose what you're going to do. But doing that, going to sales masteries, doing site visits, getting all these sorts of relationships, having, people to talk to, run things by them, through that have just built a business. And I guess what I would say is, I don't know that a lot of folks in the mortgage industry look at it as a business. Yeah. And I feel like those that do, that's their breakthrough, right? So in a business, you have job descriptions, you have processes, you have scripts, and everything is done the same way. And I suspect in all of these mortgage practices up here, that's the way it's done. So it's really just, coming into this community, gathering what I needed, and then turning it into a business.
So it's a big decision. People either are, a loan officer or a manager in business. They're in business as a loan officer or manager, and the difference is there is a systemization, there is a process, but a lot of people don't have their arms around that. What you talk about site visits? I know you did, Tim, and Tim, your site visits were amazing. What was it that you saw operationally that inspired you early on? Coming from a different industry and getting into this one.
Well, I remember, and this is going to sound really silly probably if you didn't come from telecommunications, but I remember sitting in that first day in Denver, Colorado. It was a 12-hour-long, Duncan event, and they were saying they were going to share their systems.
Yeah. Now,
when you come from telecommunications, I'm thinking like computer systems, phone systems, seriously, most of the day. And then it finally dawned on me that what we're talking about here is their loan process, their post-closing systems, and all of that stuff. So I don't know. That's
So just real quick then, what's the value of operational excellence? What are the 2 or 3 things that come to mind?
well. First of all, I think if you run a good operation, I think that it reduces turnover
Yep.
of your team, because that's one of the reasons people leave. They can't get families closed, or they've got problems with personnel, whatever. It makes recruiting to it very easy, because you can solve. I mean, the only reason someone leaves is they have a problem, right? So if you can solve for X and prove that you've got X solved, then you can recruit easier. And then it also just creates this culture where everyone's really proud of what they're doing for families, because it's going well. Their phones aren't lighting up with complaints. And so I just feel like as leaders, we just owe that to our teams to have the operational piece nailed.
So that's a big deal. We owe that to our teams. Most leaders don't think we owe our teams. Well, sadly, some leaders don't think they owe their teams anything. You came to work for me and blah, 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 blah. What's the transition that people go through? And I'll just throw this out to everybody. What's the transition you go through as a leader when you realize it's not about you and it becomes about the people? Because what you just said, it attracts people to the organization, it keeps people at the organization, and it inspires a culture of delivering the customer experience at level 10.
I mean, I'm guessing I can probably sum that question up really easy. I feel like non-world-class leaders view their team as if their team works for them. And world-class leaders view it as they are there to serve their team.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
The greatest compliments, I think, in my career came in that transition point when I recognized that, when I began to have clients, right? And the clients, as from a leadership perspective, can be the loan officers we're serving.
Yep.
From an origination standpoint, it'd be the families that we serve. But when they begin to say, it wasn't about you, you have an amazing team assembled. So when the accolades begin to come in and they're all about team and not about you as an individual, that's the greatest feeling ever. It's the weightlessness we talked about, Trevor, right? Today, we were talking about there's this space that you get into where you feel like you've paid the dues.
So go off on that weightlessness. Go off on that and just tell us what that means from your perspective, because you made a decision to be a non-producing branch manager.
Yeah, I made the decision to make it all about everybody else, and I think when you do that, the job actually gets easier. But there is a big level of trust.
Did you guys hear that? When you do that, the job gets easier. Managers have a hard time because they don't get this.
And honestly, I always tell my team, I don't like to manage.
Yeah.
I'm not here to manage, and I don't think anybody wants to be managed, but they do want to be led.
Right.
They want to be inspired, right? And so, as RJ said, if you just make it about them, it is easier because people don't really want to leave. You got to have operational excellence, of course, but it's more fulfilling. I think there's a maturity we all get to at that point in our career. We've proved ourselves, and then you're like, you know what? There's got to be more. A bigger purpose of pouring into others.
Yeah. It's interesting. We talk about, the originator, the real estate agent, that the key to high trust is you take the spotlight off yourself and you put it squarely on the client. The key to high trust leapership is you take the spotlight off yourself and you put it squarely on your team, and you give them all the credit, and you win as a team and you die as a team, but we're going to help you win. What's your take on all this?
Well, just listening to RJ and talking about operations excellence, I think if you create that in your branch or in your region or in your company, whatever it is, it's actually less stress, instead of people, because people know their place, they know their next steps, they know everything that's supposed to happen. So there's no guessing and no worrying about what's going to happen on the back end, what's going to happen on the front end. It's like an assembly line. Then it works, and not that each family is not important, because they are. But this business is stressful enough, right? To put that extra stress of not having that operational excellence in the organization that you lead, that would be crazy to do that. But I think that's one of the hard things because it's like, well, I don't want to tell people what to do. Well, why not? I mean, not that you're telling them, you're leading them and giving them direction. But at that point, everyone knows what's going on. And that makes where you don't close late and ugly, where everything is where it needs to be. It just, why have that stress? Because it's stressful enough. I mean, there's life that happens, and you're dealing with the emotions of a buyer and a seller and agents and et cetera. Why not have that operational excellence? I can't imagine running businesses without it.
So in my mind, it's we've got an interesting kind of opportunity right now. You know, there's tens of thousands of people plugging into Mastery this year, and some are going like this, and they're going, I wonder where I can start with that, because I don't control a lot of the operation stuff that my company has. And we've got others that might be maybe frustrated because they're not providing it. And then there's certainly some that would say, yeah, let's go. This is great stuff, you know, operational excellence. How do you get after it, and how do you maintain it? Because it's never done, right? It's like you're never going to have a 5-star review 100% of the time. But by pursuing it, you will always be better.
Right.
So what's everybody's take on, you know, that whole idea of like constant and never-ending improvement, and what does it look like as you guys have operational excellence, but you're trying to take it up a notch? Where's the feedback loops? You know, what do you do in your team meetings? You know, how do we scale it up? Anybody?
Yeah. I think what I love about this question and in this whole conversation, actually, this goes back to High Trust Sales Academy. It's definitely something that runs through us through Masterclass Elite and the coaching and all that you do, is when we're talking about organizational excellence or operational excellence, we're not just talking about operations. And it's a holistic view of things, right? Because in our business, it's not uncommon to look at a dividing line between production and operations, right? I used to call it the Montagues and the Capulets, right? You've got all these salespeople making promises that operations has to fulfill. And when you get to a place where you realize it's an us, right? And then you begin to build a culture of an us, right? And now we're focused. We're not thinking about what we have to do to not miss. We're not playing not to lose anymore. We're playing actually together to continue to take it to another level in terms of client experience, which is dynamic, right? The things that we do or we created 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that were breaking trends in the industry, right, today are standards.
Right.
Yeah.
So to be constantly evolving, to be networking, to be masterminding, to be growing in whatever way it is through our mentorship, our leadership, books we read, things we do together, and constantly measuring and improving.
And I think an environment where everybody on the team feels safe to share
Oh, absolutely.
ideas
Oh my
for
gosh, that's
improvement
huge, Trevor.
because they have ideas. Everybody around you has ideas. And so I have some rules at play on my team, and one of the rules is everyone is responsible for improving the systems.
Not only responsible, but you have permission
Yes.
to do it. And oh, by the way, let's take it a step further. If we are going from me to we, and it is us, then you have a obligation because you're on a team, and we're a team because we're not getting together to fail, but we understand that we will fail if we try to become great, and that failure is okay. So you have to have both a culture that it's okay to fail. It's like if you make a mistake, you got to lead that the right way so that mistakes are not punitive, and then you have to realize that most of the mistakes create breakthroughs. If you really understand that mistakes that kind of repeat maybe might be systemic, and so we're never done with this. It's like it's never out of the oven. It's never baked. It's always improving. So what do you do? What are like some of the best practices you guys have put out there so that you have these feedback loops? Where do you have growth meetings? Do you have ideation meetings? Do you have what does it look like? Because we're never done, right? And every experience either affirms we're doing something right or should give us at least a little insight to a big insight of change.
Yeah. You mentioned the word fail. We have we call it fail forward.
Right.
Meaning it's okay. And you mentioned also you have to have a culture where failures, it's totally fine. We're all safe. It's us. You're all good. And then when we have a failure, in some ways it's like, all right, awesome. Like now I get to coach through this because I see that we didn't do this. And I've consulted with some branches, even within our company, where this stuff just goes on and on and on because they're too busy to stop and talk about it. I'm like a right now guy.
Yeah.
So when it comes up, I just, grab the folks that were involved in whatever our fail forward's going to be, and we just talk through it right there.
Absolutely.
Letting that go, I mean, that, because in some ways this is an assembly line, right? It would be as ridiculous as, someone put the steering wheel on the wrong side of the car and say, we're too busy, just let it roll. But then, 15 cars later, they do it again because you never stop to talk about
I agree.
how did that happen and what do we need to put in place so we don't get the steering wheel on the wrong side of the car. And I think that would be ridiculous, right? But yet people do that in mortgage branches all across the country because they think they're too busy to stop, have a coaching moment, talk about it, make it safe, fail forward, and almost celebrate that you broke something, you figured something else out, right?
And also they're too afraid to talk to them because they're hurt their feelings or don't want to address it or whatever, which is crazy because it's not like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you screwed up. It's how can we be better here? How can we prevent that from happening for the steering wheel to not be on the wrong side
It helps you get better.
Well, I think the interesting thing that I see is when we are too busy, that is a recipe for even more disaster down the line. Because if we don't address what the steering wheel analogy is, then it is going to happen more frequently. And the further we get away from addressing it, the more it becomes okay.
Right.
And I think that's the delicate balance, right? Because if somebody thinks that it's okay because nobody caught me the next time, or it's okay because there's no ramifications, we're not in this to put anybody in jail. We're not here to make you feel bad and wrong or shame you. You're playing a vital role in the heart and soul of a customer, a family, if you will. And, we opened 2 days ago with this conversation around Einstein. And one of the things Einstein said is you can't solve the problems that you have right now at the same level of thinking you were at when you created them. And so a team has to think metanoically. They have to think differently than they're thinking to even want to advance, right? And then there should be, out of this whole operational excellence, there should be joy, right? We should have more fun at work. We should enjoy it more. It doesn't mean that we're void of stress, but we have less breakage. And I think that's the key here. So what other loops do you guys have?
I want to share one mindset shift I've made with anybody I can impact, my team, coaching clients, is make it about the system. Most problems operationally are actually system-based problems. And so nobody likes confrontation, right?
Right.
I mean, nobody wants to make somebody else feel bad, so then it doesn't get addressed.
Right.
So we say, first you have to, if you're going to autopsy the problem, whatever you want to call it, first what worked? There was always something that worked, right? You find it,
I love that.
big or small. Then what didn't work? Then how do we improve our system to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Right.
And you take it off the human beings and go, how do we improve our system? Asking more questions, a better checklist, whatever the system is. And then the emotions kind of get out of the way. And it's hard, but that is the way we try to approach it.
Attack the process, not the person.
I'm looking down the line here, you guys, and I realize that we've all been together so long. Like a lot of our kids have grown up together.
Yes.
And I immediately went back when you started talking about failure and you were talking about excellence and we were talking about opportunities to a period of time 12 years ago when Tal was 12 years old. My oldest was 12. He was playing on a select baseball team and his coach was awesome, but this was the perfect example of what you're talking about in failing. Tal blew a sure double play, right? He was out there and he blew it and he knew he blew it. But Coach Reed didn't yell at him. He didn't call him out. Like so many times we see, right, in youth sports, it's so ridiculous. They start yelling at the kids. He knows. Now he's just going to be embarrassed, and he's going to play worse. So the inning was over. Tal came off the dugout. Coach Reed grabbed him, right? And the first thing Coach Reed said is, "You okay? You all right?" Tal goes, "Yes, sir. I'm okay." And this is what he said that I thought was great. Socratic, right? Different guy, but a Socratic method, asking questions. He goes, "You know what happened?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "What's your correction?" Right? And I think from a management perspective to ask somebody, what's your correction? What would you do differently?
I love that. I love that verbiage.
I think it was a great lesson. But thanks for that little movie that just ran in my head.
I would even just make a distinction real quick that that's not management. That's leadership.
It's leadership.
Yeah, and I think it's good to lay down the line right now that we can manage the P&L, we can manage the assets, we can manage
we can manage a lot of things, but we cannot manage people. We can only lead
Right.
them. And that is a perfect example of that because I believe my oldest son quit baseball because I didn't know how to do that.
Wow.
And I believe that I was a little bit hard on him. And I remember a couple of times when Jonathan was in left field and didn't go well. And I can still vividly today remember him standing in left field crying. And we should never make anybody feel like that. And I feel, I feel remorseful for that, but it's all healed up. But it was like, I'm scratching my head going, I need to lead my kids. I need to lead them. I can't make them feel bad because if they feel bad, they're not going to want to play.
Exactly.
It's real simple. Right?
And they can hear our voices, by the way.
Yeah.
From a leadership perspective and parents.
Yeah.
We can whisper from the stands and they'll hear us over coach yelling. And our teams see us and they can see our body language. Have you ever seen a coach? It's like, they turn their head and that kid sees them and they're just like, that's just as bad as yelling at them.
Yep.
So how we respond in those moments to be able to lift them up and coach them up is a big deal. I mean, it's a big leadership lesson.
And I think that's true more now than ever, right? I think in calm waters, leaders are observed, but in, choppy waters, they're studied. We're studied by our team, right?
Yeah.
So they want to, they're watching the vibe and how are you dealing with the pandemic or, the refi boom, the this, the that, the volume, and they're literally studying you, not observing you. And so, it's important we bring a good vibe and we're on top of our game and ready to go every day.
I heard a great example of that where if you're on a plane and you hit rough turbulence, the first thing most people do is look at the flight attendant to see if they're scared.
right.
If they're nervous, we need to be
That's
nervous,
great,
right?
yeah.
So isn't that a great analogy
Yeah.
of what's our leader like when times are tough?
Yeah.
So very true.
So I remember not too far back, RJ reached out to me because I had a T-shirt on when we were doing one of our elite webinars, and he said, "Where did you get that?" And so I gave you the company's name, and you tracked it down. And then I saw you wearing it, and the T-shirt says, "Culture always wins." So what besides operational excellence, which is obviously a big vein of how culture develops, what are some of the things as we think about culture that you guys do on a regular basis to joy, create joy, to motivate, to inspire, to acknowledge, to, I think you've got a good track on this. I think it's one of the things that you do especially. But
it's funny because I went to my team because I knew that we were going to talk about this. And so I went to the team and I said, or to the leaders of our team, and I said, what have we done right? And then I asked the question, what do we need to do better? Because we're already in that thought process.
Right.
And so that helped me to know, okay, what do we need to do better? So some of the things that one of the things, because of the pandemic, we have to be more intentional.
Yeah.
So that has been, actually, there's nothing good about the pandemic, but that has taught us better to be more intentional about a lot of things that we've done versus they're just sitting next to me, so that's how they're learning, right? So I listed some of the things that they said that we've done right. Well, you know me, I got to have my list. God forbid we don't have a list here. So have a checklist, right? All right. So lunch and learns, we've done book clubs, and the lunch and learns we actually are sending them Grubhub or Uber Eats or whatever their area is, and they're bringing in food, and we're Zooming that lunch and learn, and we're Zooming that book club, and we're reading your book right now.
Which one?
We're the High Trust.
Okay, good.
So, and we're also reading the How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
So that's in our book club right now. And so we do also, we call it a Monday Jump Start. We do a midweek follow-up, just everyone's on. We do a lot of intentional shout-outs, employee recognitions. We do a lot of sales sharing where the sales team will get together and just share, this is working, this is not, that kind of thing. Intentional, every 6 weeks, we're literally, and we started this because of the pandemic, but really thinking about it, we should have probably done this before, but every 6 weeks we're sending them something fun. So one day, for some reason, something came up about electronic fly zappers. I don't even know how it came up. So we sent everybody an electronic fly zapper. Amazon. Fly swatter, yeah. Amazon's our friend, okay? It really is. I mean, we've got them on the list, right? Individual thank yous, blue board gifts, happy hours, Zooms. We've done early morning workouts where we have a girl in our receptionist as a 7-degree belt. And so she's doing some early morning workout for us on Zoom, right? Intentional anniversary gifts, birthday gifts. We have one person that's responsible for all of this. So that way, because if it's me, it will be.
So everything you just listed, there's a point person.
There's a point person that handles all of this, right? She does other stuff too, but this is what she does. And then anniversary gifts, birthday gifts. Again, we have a template built for her. She's very CS, so we have a template built for her so that it goes out, in the verbiage she wants. And care packets. If someone lost someone or if they're sick or whatever, care packets go out. And then just intentional phone calls from the leadership, doing a great job. I appreciate you. Spur of the moment thank yous, recognition of milestones. We do some surprises. I hired a guy, I think you know about this one. I hired a guy to go deliver Krispy Kreme donuts to every person. It took him 7 hours to go to every person's house.
On the team.
And delivered Krispy Kreme donuts for those that are local.
And so productivity went up for a couple of hours.
It was awesome. It was awesome because nobody expected it,
That's awesome.
And so I called Krispy Kreme and said, what can you do? So that it was pretty cool. And then we have smaller meeting groups, like our processors meet, our loan officer assistants meet, and they do, what did you learn? What do you know? So that way everyone doesn't get lost in the crowd, right? And so I think that's some of the things that we've done just to be better intentionally, whether it was pre-pandemic or after, it didn't matter.
I think I'd interrupt you and just say that doesn't really matter. I think maybe we learned it out of the adversity, right? The Garth Brooks documentary, he says something very interesting about his dad. His dad used to tell him that with every blessing there is a curse.
Right.
And with every curse, there is a blessing.
Absolutely.
And it just depends on your outlook. And I think, the pandemic has been everything it's been, and nobody needs to be reminded about what it's been. But what we've learned through it can be extended out of it, whether it goes away or lingers on or whatever, right?
I think in our industry definitely has changed.
Yeah.
Almost every industry has changed. It just basically moved us forward much faster than we would have anticipated it being. But I think that we've had to intentionally learn how to retain our and rehire, re-recruit our team members because they are not sitting. I can't just touch them every day, And so that's actually been fun for me because it's like, okay, what can we do?
I think creating a great culture should be fun.
It is.
I mean, think about it. You cannot create a great culture unless it's fun.
Right.
Because otherwise, you don't like creating a great culture because it sucks and nobody's ever going to say,
exactly.
I don't want to build a great culture. I want everybody to be miserable.
Exactly.
But this is what happens. We get too busy. We forget about culture. And now we have all these kind of breakthroughs. But I think one of the things I heard you say, and I hope that I got it right, but you did say among all of that, there's one thing you try to do every single day.
It's the intentional calling someone and just saying, hey, I appreciate you.
Praising.
Just praising. I saw that you did this right. I saw that, and I make a phone call at least once a day. It's my goal as just someone on the team. Could be a processor, could be the receptionist, it doesn't matter. Just hey, I saw that you did that right. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I saw that you made that difference. Thank you for that. And I think hearing from that is probably the most important. It's important that Christina does all of this, and it's intentional, and it's in the calendar, and it's popped up every day, and says these are check to see who's had his anniversary or birthday or whatever a week from now, those kind of things. But it's just as important to do those phone calls because they know that you recognize something that they did.
Well, people love to feel good.
Absolutely.
And they love acknowledgement and praise.
Absolutely. It's important.
Not one person on this couch does not deserve or value being told, great job.
Absolutely.
Really proud of you. And I did a post the other day or a story on Instagram, and I said, parents, tell your children you're proud of them.
Yes.
And then it was every day. And I got a text just an hour before we started from my oldest son, John, and I texted him this morning. I said, I'm proud of you. And he said, it warms my heart to make you proud. And it wasn't even about that. I didn't want tell him I was proud of him because I wanted him to tell me
Right.
he wants to make me proud.
Right.
But that's what leadership is.
It is.
That somebody on your team feels so good about you and your accolades towards them that they then respond and say, I want you to feel proud of me.
And you know what? I agree. And also, just I think telling people that are around you that, you know, with Tim and I, we talked about how proud I was of him, and because I've seen his journey for the last 22 years. I think it's so important. And as we get older, I think we realize that even more, how much we say, hey, you know what? I've recognized that. I've seen that. It doesn't have to be someone that works for you. It can be, it doesn't matter what it is. Saying that is so important. People want to know that you recognize that history, you recognize whatever it is. I think that is a huge thing that you can do just in life in general.
Yeah, good. What other comments you guys have on culture?
First of all, Linda, thank you for your friendship over the last 22 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Isn't it crazy how far back we go?
No.
Well, I think about that journey. I think about a phrase that came to mind. I think I may have just come up with my tombstone statement, right? And it may be my favorite faith statement, and it may be the favorite thing I want to be remembered for, and that was, he got up.
He got up.
He got up. Right?
I love that. He got up.
We all get knocked down. I heard recently somebody say, never trust a leader without a limp. Right? And so being
Amen.
real is big. But I think a twin sister, and almost equal, maybe just as much as praise is actually listening to our people. I mean, like really hearing them,
Yes.
taking time, that availability,
Yes.
but to hear. We had a retreat not too long ago in Sonoma, and that was something I heard loudly and clearly from the group is it matters to bring good information. It matters to keep them informed. It matters to coach them up and help them achieve what they want to do. But sometimes, just like our significant others, you know, in our personal lives, our teams want to be heard, right? And they want us to take action. So that's been a big...
And that's the more important part of that, besides being heard, is taking action. Because if you are, if you're understanding listening without action starts to get kind of hollow.
Oh, quickly, yeah.
And people over time, why say anything? Because
Right.
nothing ever changes.
You train them not to. It doesn't matter. if you do it
Right.
well, right?
Yeah. So listening, I think most leaders learn that lesson the hard way.
Yes, I agree.
I think we're too busy telling, and we're not busy enough learning. And I think retention and stickiness and obviously productivity has to do with feeling heard.
Yeah.
You know, to know that I think part of culture is having a voice. Like I do not have all the answers, and I own the company.
Yeah.
You know, and I got guys and gals on my team. You guys can make this better than I can. And I think that takes a leader that's ready to put the ego aside and say, I am not as smart as all of us. You know, I'm going to lead us, but man, it's up to you to help us win. I need you to give me feedback. Why is that important to you? And to feel heard, and to feel that there's enough time where we slow down long enough to just have those moments of connection, I think is masterful. I also think it's incredible, and we have different layers, but I remember I used to ask my CEO, my president, as CEO, I'm CEO, I had asked my president, what can I do better as a leader? And every time I asked, there was at least something that was worth thinking about. And that's a leader that puts ego aside, puts pride aside, and says, you know, I want to listen. I want to listen.
I love
Feedback
that
loops
statement.
are huge too. You've mentioned that a couple of times now. That ability to create a culture where you have, whether it's a crazy cycle like we just had to come back and then we get this break, and whenever it was, you know, we can call it June, July, August, whenever it was, things let up a little bit. But to be able to come back now and not be thinking, oh no, things have slowed down, but great, things have slowed down long enough to say, let's lick our wounds. Let's talk about what worked, what didn't work, what corrections, what's my correction, right? What corrections can we make to heal that? Even smaller groups, you know, operationally, I think of just from the standpoint of where I lead, I have some groups that are autonomous, some are semi-autonomous, some rely on our corporate, you know, our Churchill National Fulfillment team, so we've got people plugging into groups there. So in those situations, creating smaller groups where you can get feedback loops, just thinking about operational underwriting.
Right.
We need to learn a lot. Underwriting is an art, not a science, right? Conditions vary, but if we have a small group of people that are interacting and we can have healthy conversations around that, we can learn to where we don't feel like I'm going to have to overcome that extra conditioning every time because I'm in a queue.
Right.
for multiple underwriters, right? So
Right.
there's feedback loops I think are really key, no matter what size. A team of 2, a team of, or a division,
Yeah.
a branch,
Agree.
region,
Yeah.
or division.
Good commentary. All right, we're gonna take a quick break, and this is part 1 of this great panel discussion. We're gonna be back to you in moments. Just stay tuned, and we will come back at you with part 2 of the leadership trifecta. And we sure appreciate you being here. You know, I love saying thanks, and my team and I got together, and the question was, how can we say thanks to everybody that attended Sales Mastery this year? And one of the things we came up with is, why don't we give them a deal that is unprecedented for next year? Next year's our 30th anniversary. We're going to celebrate big. We've already signed our contract for the Marriott Desert Springs Resort in Palm Desert, California. What makes this so special is this is where I hosted the first Sales Mastery in 1992. So we're going to give you 48 hours to register for next year's event. The price is $495. The regular price is $995. And so for the next 48 hours, you can purchase next year's tickets for $495. So all you have to do is click the link in the chat to purchase your ticket. And I got to tell you right now, I am so looking forward to getting live again and celebrating 30 years of Sales Mastery. We could not have that run if it were not for great clients and friends like you. So again, our gift to you, $495, 48 hours, lock and load. Click the link in chat. All right, welcome back to part 2 of the leadership trifecta. We're talking about operational excellence. We're talking about value-added recruiting. We're talking about high trust retention. Obviously, one of the big takeaways is culture attracts, culture retains, makes life easier. We're committed to constant and never-ending improvement, and great leaders put the onus of improvement on the team, because the team's in the trenches. They're able to give the feedback and talk about how we can constantly better the organization. The ultimate goal is to create a machine that is fairly effortless, right? It doesn't mean we're ever going to have never have snags, but it's about it's operationally integrous. It works, and the better off we all are, including the amount of personal and professional freedom that we experience. I know one of the things, Trevor, that's big to you, and I was asking you in Elite, I was asking you, like, so what's one of the most important decisions you ever made? And the decision you made was to choose a path of being a non-producing manager, and then it was about creating this level of kind of freedom, and you called it the ultimate leadership move. What does that mean?
Early on in my career, I realized I wanted freedom. And we've all been there when you're hustling, you're first into this business, and you're available on the weekends and the evenings, and you have no freedom, right? You're trying to build a business. And I knew that wasn't the path. There was no way I could be on that path for that long. So I started trying to experimenting, going to, Sales Mastery and hiring my first part-time assistant like the next week. And I just started taking things off my plate that I didn't like doing, that just sapped my energy. And eventually, long story short, had 5 people around me. Then was only working late one night a week. Tried that out, worked, didn't lose a client. Then started taking Fridays off, didn't lose a client, and then wasn't available on weekends, for pre-approval letters. And I just either built systems or team, invested in team, and I called it, buying my freedom. I'm constantly just buying my freedom. The crazy thing, though, that happened was my revenue kept going up. Kept doing more business, and I had more freedom. So I kind of felt like I cracked this code. And then fast forward, started realizing more and more that a lot of mortgage professionals were not even aware that this code existed to be cracked.
Right.
And, I got into coaching and more leadership, and I just got to this point in my career, like, man, what if that was my unique value proposition as a leader? What if I, rather than how much comp I'm going to pay you, or what my signing bonus is going to be for you, and how low our rates are going to be, which everybody else plays in that game. What if I help you build freedom? What if I help you scale a business and build team and actually don't go work remotely, on the Lanai in Hawaii. Actually unplug, because that's what I was able to do.
It's a big difference.
And I learned, I think we all know this at this stage in our careers, like we need to rejuvenate. When you pretty much kind of work off and on all weekend, you come back on Monday, you're not at your peak for your clients or your team. We're talking about leadership here. I'm still worn out because I never really unplugged and spent time with my family and my kids. I didn't exercise. I didn't do all those things we need to do because I always have my phone on. And that's really become my passion, is helping people build that, because you could work 24/7 in this business.
Yeah.
I mean, especially with technology, and everybody else's agendas become your agenda. The realtors, right? The clients. They don't care if they're calling you on a Thursday night. They want to go look at a house tomorrow. That doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
They don't care what your schedule is or what your commitment is to your family.
So true, Trev.
So building systems around that, building team, helping people learn how to hire, helping a mortgage professional become a better leader.
I think I think about value props, I think about recruiting and attracting, and certainly operational excellence attracts. But I would believe very deeply that most people probably would value freedom over labor. And, so I think one of the things that's very interesting, and you guys know this very well, but I think it would be really important to kind of unpack it a little bit. As a certified high trust coach, Tim certainly knows, being one of my training partners with the academy. RJ knows because he coaches teams in Benchmark and part of Elite, and you certainly know it. I think we need to give people permission to understand that there is a point in time where additional labor doesn't do a thing. If anything, it reverses any positive forward progress. And you mentioned 24/7, and we try to have fun in the academy about belief, right? And so 24/7 could be 24 hours a week and 7 months a year or whatever. People think that working hard is the pathway to. There's nothing wrong with working hard, but it's entirely the wrong move if it's not replenishing, if it's destroying your family or your personal health or any of those things. And there just is a better way. We know that. We know that there's a better way. So I think that it'd be very interesting to have you guys plug into that. You as a coach know that we're measuring hourly rate. We are telling people that we are going to improve that. And we're not going to improve it by you working more. We're going to improve it by you working less and doing smarter things, more intelligently, more efficiently. And we're going to measure how that goes up because, for example, Stanford says that any hour we work after 55 hours a week has diminishing return. And people work these overtime. And RJ, one of the things you want to talk about was
overtime doesn't work overtime.
And it's true. We pay overtime. We pay all this money in overtime, and we pay more in overtime, but we get less performance. And so let's just go down the line. I'm going to let you guys just run on this because you were one of the early guys that I just challenged to freedom, and all of you have done it. And let's talk about the leadership value proposition of freedom.
I wrote down while you were talking, Trevor, thank you for what you just shared. I wrote down know your why and solve for X, right? Being really clear on what it is that's driving you and why. Then we evaluate where we are, right? We're here. We have to clearly evaluate that. We know where we want to go. X is what's in the middle. X is what we solve for. I'm here. I want to go there. I know why. So now solve for X.
But where is there in the freedom equation?
Well, that's determined by, that's DNA, right? That's in your own DNA. That's unique probably to each of us.
But I think, Todd, you've taught us that. When somebody says, I want to do 5 more loans a month.
You're here. I can do that again.
Well, let's remind everybody, because when somebody says, I want to do 5 more loans a month, you could just stop there and try to show them how to do 5 more loans a month. But when you ask them, why is that important to you to do 5 more loans a month, and you dig in and have that core values conversation, freedom means different things to everybody. Some
Yeah.
people have plenty of money, but they're working 12-hour days. Some people have tons of time off, but they have no business and they have no income. So you got to dial in what kind of freedom
Well,
do they want.
let's just define freedom.
Yeah, let's do it.
What is freedom? For most human beings, what would freedom be?
Define your values and live in congruence with them.
Define your values, live in congruence with them, and believe that there is a better way
Yeah.
to do life, right?
Mhm.
And you stop and you think about nobody on the planet in our business has ever gotten a plaque from leadership that says most hours worked.
Yeah.
Month of March.
Right.
You just don't
No.
get that.
Right.
You might get employee of the month, but there's no relationship between what that means and time. And I think what I try to do is I try to push people to understand, I think this is the ultimate leadership move. The ultimate leadership move is if I can come to work with you and I can have a better life experience, I can have less personal and professional stress, and I can add more value to our clientele. And as a result of that, have freedom. Then I would sign up for that all day long. Because I watch families break up. I watch people die. Sometimes because they forget that health is important. Sometimes because they lose their purpose and take their life. I watch kids wish they had more time with their parents. I watch parents cry, wishing they had spent more time with their kids. There's all these wish I hads, right?
Yeah.
And I think that, I think that this freedom thing it's not a fast track. We're not usurping, our responsibilities or ignoring our priorities. It's actually the way you achieve freedom. You achieve freedom by focusing on things that matter most, that are part of your values, and live in congruence with it. So that's all I'm going to say. You've already started.
I would actually like to jump in here. So
Yeah.
I think, when Trevor's talking about this, and most of us go to the originator.
Yeah.
But I think that as leaders, you also have to remember that your ops team, your loan officer assistants, guess what? They have families, they have goals, they have definitions of freedom, and you have to respect that as well. It's not that the originator gets to have all this freedom and the ops team is the dumping ground because they're in Hawaii, right? That can't happen.
That's right.
So it's got to be a give and take, understanding, high trust, right? What's important to them is the most important. Like I have some of my level 1 underwriters. One of the most important things to her is having the week off before Christmas, and the other one takes the week between Christmas and New Year's and grabs Thanksgiving, right? So we work it all out, and just understanding what that looks like, right? And same thing with my production partner. She's been with me 9 years. She wants to be off around Christmas. That is key to her. So I have to work around Christmas. I mean, I don't get to go to Hawaii over Christmas because it's important to her that she has that time off. So it's got to be a give and take. Otherwise, you're going to have turnover.
Right.
And then the whole thing is ruined from there. And, we talk about how overtime doesn't work overtime. I recruited a rock star ops person last year for no other reason. I mean, she'd heard about our team from people that were on it, but the only reason she was coming is because she heard from our processors that they get to leave at 5 o'clock. And she was required to put in overtime and was required to work one Saturday a month doing front end lead stuff. What?
Why?
What?
That's crazy.
I don't know. And she doesn't like the front end, right? That's
Of course.
not.
That's
of
why
course.
she's an underwriter.
So, okay, great. And so we got this unbelievable talent that fit perfectly in our culture, just because of the other company was just using and abusing their ops team.
Yeah, it's a huge discovery.
Yeah.
Here's an experiment. why don't we have a day where we invite our ops, production, everybody, bring your kids to work day. Let's find out how many kids, when we ask them, what do you do when you want to grow up, say, I want to do what mommy does, or I want to do what daddy does. There's a litmus test, right? What are we like? What are our people like when they go home after a day of working together with us?
See, I think that's a breakthrough because we already know the answer, right? And the biggest guilt that a lot of people feel, and some on the mastery stage this year have gone through this transition where you come home and all you do is just in some other subtle way you're still working. You're checking text, you're doing email, you're doing this kind of stuff, and again, that idea of full engagement, and this is a great leadership concept. Full engagement means wherever you are, be there, be present, be in that moment, and you can't bifurcate your moment. You can't say, I'm going to be everything in 2 moments at once. That's just impossible. There's one moment, and then there's another moment. You can't multitask moments because that's what we do, right? And I think we've all learned lessons about this, but I think the great gift that leaders can provide their team is to teach them how to compartmentalize and segment, because that would be a travesty. The last thing I want to do, because I watched my dad for 20 years, is be a mortgage person.
Right.
I grew up and I never saw my dad. Last thing I ever want to do is get in the mortgage or real estate business. So this is a hard lesson a lot of people learn, and we all have bumps and bruises. But I think the freedom conversation, and most certainly this ops tension, having ops be as celebrated as sales. It's.
Well, you know what, and here's another key that I've discovered. I think you guys are probably all there, but this idea of understanding operationally, hiring actual operationally excellent people is when we find our perfect person, we can't hire them until we know what their why is, because if they can't achieve their why while providing us exactly what we need, then we're going to lose them. We will find the perfect person, we will hire the perfect person, and we will lose the perfect person because if they're not able to fulfill what it is they want to do. So I think that part of the interview process, beyond determining they're the right fit and have all the qualifications and doing all the reviews and everything, is actually understanding what's important to them and then partnering with them and then actually leading them in a way that helps them achieve it over time. I think it's a big opportunity.
So, RJ, you had, I have something written down here. You have had 100% retention throughout the pandemic, all of 2020 and 2021. I suspect that the rest of you have pretty good retention. Obviously, we all oftentimes lose people, but it's intentional. Beyond culture, beyond freedom, and it can be a question for all of you, but I don't think it's common to have retention at that level. In fact, I know it's not. Especially during a pandemic. So what's the insight to that?
I mean, I think it all started years ago as the team was built. So it's hard to not have this conversation, not bring up the word culture. So we don't really hire mortgage talent or superstars or whatever. We can make them that. We hire cultural fits. We hire service-oriented individuals. And many times when I walk around my office and introduce you, it's like the 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? So, you met Heather a little while ago. Well, she's my niece, and this, everyone is like interrelated and was referred, they're friends, and so they don't want to leave, right? Because it almost becomes like their family and their friends are there, and that's where they want to be. Goes along with respecting their lives and their balance and all that sort of stuff. And then paying well, not expecting too much. The other thing that I've always subscribed to, well, not always, but and we've talked about this before, but in Deer Valley, you talked about always being staffed up a half or one person ahead. So I've always subscribed to that, and believe it or not, last year, you think about the volume, I actually had I call them level 1 underwriters, but y'all would know them as processors, actually raised their hand and said, we could handle more. So we reached out to Benchmark Corporate and people that needed help. Here came, a bunch more families into our pipeline. And, you're getting revenue into the branch for that. They're making more money. And then when you divide the fixed expense of salaries and benefits, everything just, gets, incrementally better. So we did that all throughout last year in just raising our hand, and branches that were coming over that needed help, we would help them. That's pretty crazy.
It's pretty unexpected. It's probably not very frequent where a team will tell their leader, hey, we can do more.
Yeah.
How long ago was it, RJ, that you, because I think you're the father of the term families instead of clients. I remember you teaching us that in Arizona.
Yep.
How many years ago
Well, truth
was
be
that?
told, I got that from George Akers.
Okay, that's
Yeah, and
that's cool.
and then when I decided to launch into my own, kind of branch, I talked to everybody about it.
Yeah.
And we decided we were no longer going to use the words file, deal, loan,
Unit.
unit, right, and everything was just
Yeah,
replaced
borrower,
with family.
funding, everything was family.
Yeah. And that is an absolute game changer.
It is.
Within the first
a
week
mind
of
shift.
transitioning over, we had what you would have called a hard file. But the processor was like, that one word, wow.
Family.
That's a family. They've had a
Solid.
short sale. They've got some tough medical things. But I'm really good at what I do. This is her talking. And I'm going to dig in and I'm going to help that family.
is that?
And we're going to get them taken
Yeah.
care of, right? It's just huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
agree.
been fun to watch it just, go really, I don't know, at least in our community,
Yeah.
right? It's
Oh, I
everywhere.
Same
hear,
way.
I hear it a lot of places.
Yeah, it's
And I
really
don't know
cool.
people know, so now I know it's
Yeah.
George.
Yeah, it's George Akers.
Or was it?
Yeah,
Right?
George.
They
George.
were on for a-
Yeah.
Man, George
And no
has been
surprise, right? If you know George, that he would
Yes.
come up with that.
What a
Well,
wonderful man.
he was early to the ALE stage.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 25 years ago,
Yeah.
he was in Hawaii at ALE, and
Yeah.
I love
he was
George.
always a guy worth following. Still
Yeah.
is. But I think it's interesting when we think about something right now that at least the family orientation, I think it has an added value beyond just the obvious that we're talking about right here. And I think the added value is we all know that with technology, there is a need to continue to create and keep humanity in the transaction. And we also know that when a family is acquiring real estate, especially for the first time,
Big.
but every time, it's a big deal. We're
big
buying
deal.
a house because it's not always about, we're going to buy a house because it makes financial sense. Most people are going to buy a house because it's for the family,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And when you look at emotion and you look at promotion, you look at how the industry still parks on rate as an attraction or the costs of doing a loan. And I believe this more and more every day. I think the most human company wins. I think the most human person wins. I think that marketing today is overrated. I think marketing automation is overrated. I think we send a lot of noisy messages that if people really understood how ineffective marketing was, we're killing two things at one time. We're killing the relationship because we're sending things that don't matter, and we're forgetting the relationship because we're not reaching out to understand what matters. And I think there's this like alchemy where technology better be managed right now, because I think high trust is like needs. I think high touch is needs. I think high tech is speed. And I think you can't have speed without need, and you can't have touch without need. And if you don't know what people need, all the technology in the world doesn't do a thing.
I agree.
And so the family thing keeps the emotion alive. And I think far too often I don't think the industry, a lot of companies do it right, but I think a lot of people are still transactionally oriented. So what's the transition to get because I got to think every time a processor or somebody on the ops team talks with a borrower and they understand emotion, because they're technicians, right? But they understand emotion. They understand what the family believes in and what they want. I got to believe that impacts culture in a major way. And it also probably impacts retention.
I think a game changer at our company is you've actually come in and done high trust for underwriters, corporate underwriters, right? And high trust, and they now better understand what we do. And I mean, when I stepped into the company, and if you're in this community, that might be something to think about having you do, right? Because now everyone's got this common language. I mean, it's very noticeable.
Some things get burned into our collective conscience, and as you were both talking there, I remember you had Ken Blanchard in Hawaii, This has been a long time
A
ago,
long
15
time ago.
years ago,
It's
maybe.
longer than
No,
that.
it was 2000.
So
Yeah,
you wrote
it was
Gung Ho,
20
Big
years ago.
Bucks,
Yep.
and Gung Ho,
Raving fans.
Raving Fans,
Raving
Gung Ho,
Fans.
and Big Bucks. So I think it was just before he was releasing Gung Ho, maybe,
Yep.
or Big Bucks.
No,
He was
it was
talking
Big
about
Bucks.
the
Yeah.
He'd
Okay,
already
Big
done
Bucks.
Gung Ho.
So,
in fact, his speech was on Gung Ho.
but here's
Yeah.
what he was talking about. He said companies, he was talking about recruiting, companies will spend millions of dollars on recruiting campaigns to go out and find and attract new people. What if you turned that money inside
Yep.
and spent that millions on creating the culture and the better
Keeping
place to work?
Keeping people.
And so in the same way, I thought, as you were talking about marketing, which is oftentimes meant to, you think about lead gen, you think about generating more business, more opportunities. What if the marketing became much more about the experience of the client we have?
Right.
What if it was all about taking care of families while we're serving them so that they can't stand themselves?
Can I say something
Until
right
they
now
refer us.
that I think we need
During
to,
and after.
need to put a knife in this right now.
Let's do it.
I think marketing to what we think it means is the same as transactions to what we think it means. I think transactions should be family, and I don't think marketing serves a purpose of connection. I don't think we should use the word marketing anymore. I think we should use nurturing. I think we should use connecting. I
Yep.
think we should use retaining,
Value
this idea
fulfillment.
of this idea that marketing attracts could not be more wrong than ever. It doesn't retain either. Most of the marketing that's going out might have 15% of the people it goes out to that it's really impacting. And there's so much digital noise right now; it's getting in the way.
Yeah.
Right? And I think we need to take our mind off of what marketing has become. We all knew what it should be,
Right.
but what it has become is an animal.
Instead of what's your marketing campaign, what's your connection campaign?
What's your connection campaign? What's your
I like
nurturing
that.
campaign?
I'm using,
What's
I'm,
your
I'm
nurturing
using that.
campaign?
Yeah, write
good
that
here.
down. I
What
love
if,
it.
what if our brand is what our clients get? What if it is what our families get? What if it is the fulfillment and the experience and what it is, rather than our image? It's more about what's delivered.
And not to bring this full circle, but everything we're describing gives you more freedom in your business because you're just taking care of people and you're providing a great experience and you're not overworking them and you're giving praise and recognition and you've got a business you love.
But the problem right now,
And you don't have to work as hard. You're doing the parts you love to do.
Right.
no, but here's the problem. I'm going to reverse this on you. No, I know I am, because here's the problem. The problem is we're talking about freedom, and we're talking about a brilliant client experience. And what still is the number one thing that most LOs don't do that would give them the ultimate freedom?
They don't nurture.
They don't nurture.
Yeah.
We got operational excellence, we get 5-star reviews, and then we don't nurture the market.
Right.
Right.
And it's the biggest regret
Right,
loan
right.
officers have. And by the way, ops staff would really be better off understanding nurture.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
being part of nurture and being comped on nurture and being, I mean, it's just like crazy. And yet we're sending marketing out so often that it is causing a chasm between connectivity, loyalty, and
Yeah.
referability. I think so. The very thing we're trying to create gets sabotaged.
Would you guys agree that if our greatest recruiting tool, and it may be, or at least should be, would be our own teams, our own people, the people that work for us, our operations teams,
has
our
to be.
production teams. But in the same way, right, if you turn that back on what you just talked about, is our greatest source of new business should be the clients we have, and if we nurture them, that happens. Right? My goal and the goal of my team is to make sure that throughout this and by the end, you can't stand yourself until you post on your Nextdoor app and tell everybody about what an amazing experience you have. I'm not going to ask you, and listen, I know this runs contrary to a lot, and you may call me out right here. I'm not going to ever ask you for a referral because I think I should earn it throughout. And my goal and the goal of my team is to serve you in a way that you can't wait to tell other people about what happened. That would be the biggest thank you.
I'm not
That's
gonna jump
awesome.
on you for that.
Yeah, you.
But
Not on
I do
camera.
think there's
Oh,
a
what's your rate?
No, but I think there's an interesting rationale because you want to earn it. You do want to earn
Yeah,
it, and you don't want to just ask for it. But you do want to set the hook. I think there's an interesting. We talk about the law of leverage and high trust selling, and I think the law of leverage, and when we look at a family that we're trying to serve, is by the time that we're done, I want you to be blown away. I want you to feel 100% comfortable that if any of your friends ever need a lender, you would feel good about referring them to us. Help me understand between now and closing what would need to happen for that to occur. And that way leverage is there, right? You don't have to ask every time you call,
Right.
do you have a referral, blah, blah, blah. Because it should be natural. It should be like, here's my guy, here's my gal, and I will fall on the sword to tell you, you will not be let down. That's what we want. We want that. Here's the deal that I think is the ultimate freedom move. Think about if every borrower that has ever gone through a mortgage experience for any mortgage company in the world was so blown away that every year they'd refer one person. You wouldn't need a market like we had last year to dominate. It would just happen. And I think we miss that. And it's sad to me that we're having this conversation on operational excellence and blowing the customer's mind and taking them to the finish line and serving families, and then they fall off the cliff. And I think that's the greatest travesty of all. And I don't think a lender going forward is going to be able to really set their hooks into the business unless they understand the power of their tribes.
You just define transactional business.
Yeah.
I mean, essentially.
No.
I think, earning it is, I totally agree with you, but I'd also say we have to define when do you really earn it. If you spend half hour with somebody and completely provide a paradigm shift with how they were looking at financing a home,
Get them to
it
think
helps
about
them
things
create a
differently.
new path to wealth. I think you earned it.
Yeah.
But a lot of people define it as, once I get this entire loan done for your family,
Sure.
and it's on time and everything goes perfect,
Yeah.
I hope I earned it. I don't buy into that anymore.
Yeah,
I think
rents
you
do
earn
every
it all
day,
the way
rents do
through
every
the
milestone.
transaction.
You've got to earn it throughout. So.
All right, so operational excellence attracts and retains. Value-added recruiting is bringing people into a freedom model. High trust retention is honoring people and helping them experience greatness in your brand and with your team and feeling like they're a meaningful part of contributing to a family's well-being. We got all that done. We talked about failure. We understand the power of that. And so I think what I'd like to do in maybe our 5 minutes here is just go down the line. What's the biggest failure that you've had as a leader that you would like to do over on? So we'll start with you, Trev. Or whoever would like to start. Some of you might be more ready than others.
So many. Where do I start?
So many, where do I start?
Irrefutable principle number one, right?
Yeah.
That can be improved. I'll just go with an easy, obvious one: hiring the wrong people.
Yeah.
Hiring too quickly over the years because you need to fill a position, or me being the one who makes the decision because I think everybody's going to be great, and
Or
So
waiting too long to let that person go.
Well, it's both.
Yes, and again, I'm the visionary for my team these days. So the pressure and stress it puts on the rest of my organization when I bring on the wrong person, or I say yes, we're going with this guy or this gal. I've done that a number of times, and I always say, well, you gotta kiss a lot of frogs, and now we've got this amazing group of people. So I learn from it. Every time I think you do make a hiring mistake, you learn, but.
But we should learn really fast. Because it's never going to change. Ippolito Garcia, who was on just before you guys, $200 million this year, 9 LOs. And he says the key to my success is I hire very, very slow and I terminate very, very fast. And that's the recipe, and the goal is to have less and less of the wrong hires. But so oftentimes the problems are because we hire fast and not go deep enough and so on.
I agree.
And sometimes not involving our teams. I mean, if you have superhuman powers about deciding on people and you can do it, but how many times do we sell our team that I've just hired the most amazing person, and then you get the equivalent of a total organ rejection from your team? They're like, there, you fixed them, But if we, I think, begin to involve our team in that interview process, involve them in the selection, when stuff happens, and it will, they want to be a part of helping to fix it and help solve it. They're a part of the decision, right? So I think
That's the biggest mistake.
that could have been one of them, but I think I'm going to go with, All of the brilliance in the room when we do masterminds, whether it's elite or get-togethers like we do, there's so much that comes. I used to call it a hangover, just a creativity hangover. You leave that group and you're like back in the world, and you're like, why aren't people cool? Like, why don't people think and treat people well? But you come back in, and my team used to get a little nervous because they're like, oh, great, he's going to come back with a bunch of ideas, to come in with. So I think one of the greatest mistakes I made was to come back glowing from being on the mountaintop with these ideas that we were going to do. This is a great idea. And I began to shift after a while because the room got quiet. People were looking at me and sort of there was this, okay, and how's this going to work? And so I began to come back and instead lead a conversation around an opportunity and get feedback. And what I found, what I first thought was, I'm really being brilliant now because I'm going to facilitate them coming up with the answer I already have. And what I found is, holy cow, even at an assistant to my, transaction coordinator had the most amazing ideas. And we came up with way better ideas than I even came home with. And people took ownership of it, and they wanted to do it, and then they got credit for it, and it just began that culture of people feeling like they could improve our surroundings and make a difference. So that was huge, instead of try to force my own stuff through. So.
Good.
Yeah. I'm going to say that mine was probably, as a younger buck, thinking I had all the answers, and basically stopped all coaching. It was a distraction, didn't want it on my calendar, all that sort of stuff. You can get so unplugged so fast with these like cutting edge little ideas and nuggets. So I did that for a couple of years, and now, it's just part of the deal, which is so silly, right? I mean, my first year in the business, you and I have talked, I think I spent like $25,000, and the results of that speak for themselves. Why? It just doesn't make any sense. Golfers have coaches. Michael Jordan had a coach. It's like, hello, genius. Get back in.
Hello.
Yeah.
That's good.
I agree.
That's a good one.
I agree. All right, so this one's easy. I thought I was superhuman, superwoman, and that everything fell on me, and I had to make all the decisions, and my ideas were always the best, and I had to choose everything, right? I was stupid. All right, that was really stupid. So what you do over time is you learn, number one, you don't know everything.
Yeah.
Number two, they have better ideas than I do. Just hire the right people and then just mentor them.
Yeah.
And they will come up with so much better than I ever dreamed. And it's so much fun now in where I am in my business, growing and watching them grow and be the leaders that they are going to be so much better than I am, and just listening to people instead of thinking
when
it's
you went
us.
through that transition.
Yes.
It was like, I am going to give up control.
Yes, and it's so hard because as you know, a control freak.
Yeah.
But it has been so much fun to watch leaders and even just everyone in the team contribute, because everyone all together is much better than one person.
Yeah. Awesome. Very, very good conversation, guys. Very, very good conversation. Salient stuff that can really change the game.
Yes.
Yeah, really change the game. I hope you've enjoyed this two-part leadership panel. These guys are the real deal, and whatever your takeaways are, as a leader, you have a chance to change the lives of the people that work with you, and I think that this panel speaks for itself on how to do it. I do want to mention just a couple of things. I think that a leader's responsibility is to train up the people that he or she leads to really help them achieve everything we've talked about here. And one of the ways that we do that is through the High Trust Sales Academy. Everybody on this couch has been through it multiple times. Can I ask you guys in a very succinct 60 seconds just to tell people, look into the camera and tell them the value of the High Trust Sales Academy?
15 seconds each or 60 seconds
60
each?
seconds each.
Yeah,
Look into this camera right here.
So for me, it was monumental. It was called the Loan Officer Productivity School back in the day. It's morphed in and become something more. But for me, it was a point in my career where I was making a choice. Todd, if you remember, I actually refinance my FHA mortgage to back then get an MIP refund to be able to pay for the course, to be able to go there. I wasn't on somebody else's dime, so I went there to determine, am I going to stay in this business or not? Because I was working 6 and 7 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, trying to figure out how to do this business, doing 10 million a year in production. So to turn around, to have the epiphany because of your mentorship and your leadership, and understand that this business could be way more. And a big part of that epiphany was not, I mean, I was so impressed with so many people that you featured. You know, there are so many top producers that you profile, but where I really got clear was understanding what gifts I had and not trying to become something I wasn't, to really dig into my unique abilities and skill sets to connect with people, and then learning trust the way you've taught it. What an influence.
And if I recall correctly, you went from 10 million to the next year 40 million. You left it at 40 and built the team, and the year after that you went to 90.
While reducing the hours worked and weekends
radically.
and everything dramatically.
Radically.
No, it was, I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
RJ?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a game changer. The timing of the event was perfect for me. It was about 6 weeks after I started in the industry. So it allowed me to go talk to realtors, talk to borrowers at that time, and feel like I knew what I was doing. You know, I was able to kind of jump and grow wings on the way down. And that, you know, going to that event made my business look like a hockey stick. And I'll say this, any originator that's ever been on our team, we have sent there. We have 3 going in November that are on our team. So yeah, obviously we believe in it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I
You
think
might hold the second most frequent record.
probably, yeah, because I'm a slow
Wally's come
learner.
8 times.
I'm a slow learner, okay? Other than Wally, we're probably both a little slow learners, but, you know, we've been there multiple times. But I think that every time I come out of it, I learn more and more how to run a business like a business. So I'm not a loan officer. I am an originator who runs I'm a business person that happens to originate loans and now leads originators to originate loans. So it is, that was the biggest thing for me. I didn't have that mentorship going into it. So that was my aha the very first time is this is like you run this like a business, but then I didn't know how to do that. So then that's what I learned from there is how you run it like a business. And it was life-changing. It's family-changing. It is legacy-changing. It's
So
not
true.
just me. There's a legacy now, a change from that first high trust.
I have a text from you, and I won't get into any detail, but I have a text from you when you were buying the building that you were buying a couple
Yes.
years ago. And you sent me a text because you had done your net worth statement. And that text said, I just want you to know what a big role you played in
Yes.
helping me with this and that number. And it was staggering. And that's what's available for everybody.
Yes.
It's just like, there's a better way to do this.
There is.
And I'll teach you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. I've got two ways I look at this. You know, sales mastery, I've grown up on it. I never miss. I love it. You go, you get inspired.
Hey, so some very exciting news. Next October 2022, we're going to be celebrating, are you ready? Sales Mastery 30th year anniversary. There is not an event that has lasted that long that's privately owned ever in the history of personal growth and success. And I got to tell you, we could not have done it without guys and gals like you that trust the brand, that keep coming back. But 30th year live, back to where we started, 1992. I had a vision to do this event. We had 297 loan officers show up. And now, almost 30 years later, we've had hundreds of thousands of people impacted by Mastery and millions of homeowners and consumers. And so we're going to make a promotion during Sales Mastery for you to buy your ticket for next year's live event, and it will be so cheap. It's never been this cheap in the history. 30 years. I charged more in 1992 than we're going to charge for next year's 30th anniversary celebration. So click the link, get your ticket. You're going to be blown away. We're going to celebrate big, 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 big. And I want to thank you for making Mastery so special to not only me and my family, but obviously to the millions of borrowers that have been impacted and realtors that have been impacted. Come join us. 2022, October, Sales Mastery. Buy it now. All right, gang, that was a quick flip to our VIP session. We are at the end of our third day of content, and you, of course, get to hang out with me for the next hour, hour and a half, whatever you want to do today. We've got 3 days of content that has kind of accumulated, and hopefully you've been taking very discerning notes and deciding what you want to do and when you want to do it and why you want to do it. But I thought what I would do real quick is for 3 days, I've been just looking at words that have been used during Sales Mastery, and I've been writing these down. And so I'm just going to really quickly go through this deck. So this is one of the words that I think was used repeatedly at Mastery this year. And then this is, that's the other word that was used repeatedly at Mastery this year. And so we have dreams, and then we have